Welcome to the Flagler County Planning and Development Board public hearing for May 11th, 2021. We'll start with our first item, which is the roll call.
Michael Boyd,
Here.
Timothy Connor, Jack Corbett,
Here.
Mike Goodman, Mark Langello,
Here.
Anthony Lombardo,
Here.
and Fernando Melendez.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
You. Item number 2, let's pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we start, just to explain the quasi-judicial process, the audience should refrain from clapping, booing, or shouts of approval or disagreement. That avoids the potential of legal ramifications and possible overturning of the decision of the courts. The public hearing must be fair in 3 respects: substance and appearances. The process that we're going to be going through for these applications and items, the staff will have a 10-minute presentation, applicant 15-minute presentation, public comment will have 3 minutes, and then we'll also have 10 minutes each for an applicant rebuttal and closing staff comments. We'll move forward with item number 3. This is for application 3254. This is a quasi-judicial requiring any ex parte communication that our board has had with the applicant. Has anyone had any communication at all? Application 3254 is a special exemption for home occupation in the R1B Urban Single Family Residential District. We'll go ahead and open it up to staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application, in some districts, in some zoning districts, the home occupation does not require a special exception. The R1B is an exception since it requires the special exception. So you have to come forward with the application to the planning board for your review and your approval. This is lot 14, 2996 Painter's Walk. It's a single-family home within that development. And this graphic here shows that land use. It's at one of the low-density residential land uses that's there, and then the urban single-family residential or R1B zoning district applied. And then, as I've been including, the flood zone showing that the home is entirely outside of the flood hazard area, zone AE being towards the intercoastal. The home itself is outside of that area, and then also including the soils just for your reference. And having those areas here, as we can imagine, next to the intercoastal being primarily the dredged material in this area along that east side of the intercoastal. And here's that layout of the wetlands that I'm also going to try to include in all of our packets, and so you can see that there are no wetlands affecting the home itself. And so this particular request for an internet-based e-commerce business, the application was prompted by the request from the owners for a sign-off on a business tax receipt when they came in. And then learned that the special exception was needed first in order to get that sign off. And then all of our home occupation requirements would apply. Again, this is a little unique. You don't see too many of these because it's rare for us to have an application in an R1B zoning district. It's not prohibited. It's just it necessitates this process. The lots are a little smaller than those other districts where we don't have this requirement kick in. And in those instances, they come forward to the staff. Staff reviews with the applicant the home occupation guidelines that mainly say, in very brief terms, that the outward appearance of the home needs to remain as a home. There would be no external trips generated by the home occupation, no signage related to that use. Everyone in the neighborhood would continue to consider it as a home itself without any outward appearance. You did see the 2 comments that we did receive. We referenced those in the staff report, and once those folks were explained what the application entailed, what was being sought here, they were in favor, or at least not opposed to this use, and had no further comments. And so with that, here's the detail of that. I included the survey copy, kind of shown. This is in your packet, but I wanted to show it that same northward orientation, just showing, again, no surprises here. It's single-family lot, Lot 14 with a house on it. You have three options as we've laid them out: approval of the special exception for the home occupation at 2996 Painters Walk, denial of the special exception. And with that denial, you would find that one of the criteria, one or more of the criteria for the special exception had not been met, or your third option, tabling, and typically then for a time and date specific on the basis that you would need more information from either staff or the applicant in order to render a decision on this request. With that, I'll close, submit my report for the record. Await any questions or comments. The applicant is present for any questions you have from them. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. Would the applicant like to come up to the podium and their presentation? You have a 15-minute limit. You could just scoot over to the microphone there. And please state your name and where you reside.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm Robert Coulter. With me is Gabriella Francis. We live at 2996 Painters Walk in Flagler Beach, Painters Hill. We're here to petition for a special exemption to operate a home-based business, as the gentleman here so excellently explained. So we really have nothing further to add to his discussion. So we're here to answer any questions that you all or anyone may have.
Thank you. Mr. Langello?
Mr. Chairman, could you just, for the record, because when I read this, I saw something in one area that sort of described briefly what you're doing. I don't need real big details, just a broad overview of what your operation is, because you're saying you're not going to have any customers, you're not going to have any products. So what is it you're doing, basically?
Well, we basically are operating an online type business where we have an office that is in the back of the house. It's a game room converted to an office space, whereby we sit at a computer and look for products to sell online. We don't house or warehouse any product. It would be housed by some other supplier, such as like Amazon. If you go online to Amazon, you order a product, then you could order our product from, say, Amazon, and they would fulfill it. So all the products would be warehoused by Amazon and fulfilled by Amazon. So that's the basic.
Okay, so you
business
won't,
model.
there won't be delivery trucks dropping and leaving
Not
packages?
for us, no. We
Okay.
don't warehouse, store, anything. Basically, operate online by way of personal.
Okay, I just wanted you to say it into the record because
Yep.
it was sort of unclear.
Can you just go into the microphone or just speak a little bit louder
I'm
too?
sorry.
That would work.
Kind of lost my voice.
I got you.
Repeat myself?
I think you're fine. You can just carry on.
So sufficient?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the board have any comments or questions?
It's basically drop shipping.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us here. Good to meet all of you in person.
At this time, we'll open it up to public comment. If anyone has anyone wishes to comment on this item, please come up to the podium now. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment.
Chairman,
Oh, yes, sir.
could I make a motion?
Absolutely.
I think we find that they meet all the criteria of the staff report, and I'd like to make a proposal that we grant the request.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a seconded. I call the question. All in favor and aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. We have a unanimous vote to approve item number, application number 3254. All right, on to item number 4. This is application 3257. This is also a quasi-judicial application. Does any of our board members have anything to disclose? Any communication? I will disclose that the applicant did contact me by phone to speak about possibly putting a meeting for him to speak about it. My schedule was busy, and that was the extent of the conversation. It was fairly fast, so that's my disclosure for this application. So application 3257 is the determination of the use in the C2 General Commercial and Shopping Center District. This is for the property located at 5658 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. At this time, we will open it up to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you had on the dais for you, you had a packet from Mr. Million that should be identical to the one that had been provided to you within the full staff report, but that was made just for you. We had inadvertently left that out of the distribution when we had delivered the packets to you. You also had the two letters, one from Mr. Fafidio, one from Mr. Crow, submitted by email by Mr. Bayer. And so you have those printed and available for you here tonight. So here's a subject property showing the extent of the zoning, the numbered lots 41, 42, and 43. And as we had discussed before, the 40-foot area, I think it's 40 foot that's left out within lot 41 that is, it was intended to be a buffer, I think, from the 2000 zoning. And then you'll see then likewise, correction, that was the future land use here, commercial high intensity, and here's the zoning that corresponds there, the C2 commercial high intensity that for the extent of the three lots, again, omitted on that 40-foot stretch there on lot 41, described as a buffer in that 2000 land use classification change as it was crafted in that agenda item. The extent of the special flood hazard area, here showing the Zone X limits, Zone X shaded, and then the Zone AE as you got closer to the intercoastal. So that those three present on the property, Zone X shaded, and then Zone AE. And then here's the wetlands map that corresponds to that same subject property. And so this is a little unique also for us in that this is within the zoning, this particular zoning district, the C2 zoning district, says that you're to make this determination. And so this particular request by the applicant is for you to determine that a marina is a permitted use in the C2 district within the A1A Scenic Corridor Overlay District. The language specifically from the C2 zoning district, other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the Planning and Development Board that such uses are appropriate in the C2 district. The standard industrial classification manual will be used as a reference for these determinations. So the C2 district gives you that method for approval of similar uses, but those that are not specifically listed. Marinas are not listed as permitted uses within any zoning district in the Land Development Code. Marinas also are not defined in the Land Development Code. Omitted uses in the C2 district are not prohibited. You'll see, and maybe you've heard us talk about it before, where there's some inclination that if you have some omission of a use, that because it's omitted, that it's prohibited. Well, we have a code that says if it's allowed, it's listed. If it's not listed, then you really can't do it. But here in the C2, it says similar uses are permissible upon a determination by the Planning Board. C2 district includes specifically prohibited uses in the A1A Scenic Corridor Overlay District. A little unique for us also. A few other zoning districts, those others that are impacted by the scenic A1A will list those prohibited uses. C2 is one of those, calls those out. Otherwise, our code does not have a specifically listed provision for prohibited uses. This one calls it out in the C2 district. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you some history on where we got this language from, this other kind of classification we've got. So 1991, when we did that Unified Land Development Code, we have this language that was in O1, O2, C1, and C2. And so the O1 being specific to what that is. It's a professional office district, and so it says other professional office uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the planning board. Such uses are appropriate in the O1 district. O2 had it in the general office category. Other general office or related uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the planning board. Such uses are appropriate in the O2 district. C1, other commercial uses of a nature, but knowing that C1 is classified as a neighborhood commercial district. Note that it doesn't say other neighborhood commercial uses, it just says other commercial uses. A distinction maybe without a difference, but the O1 and O2 both made a distinction and called it out. Our framers in 91 said O1, professional office uses, O2, general office or related uses, C1, other commercial. May be key for you, maybe not. Other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the planning board and approved by the county commission that such uses are appropriate in the C1 district. Again, note the difference here when I get into C1 and, as you'll hear me say, in C2. At the time in 91, these uses required approval, recommendation by planning board, ultimate approval by the county commission. Your O1 and O2 did not include that language, reserved to the planning board the determination in each of those respective zoning categories. Your C2, other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination, planning board and approved by the county commission that such uses are appropriate in the C2 district. So 91, that sets your groundwork. Your C1 and C2 by 1995 through Ordinance 9506 were changed as follows. Your O1 and O2 stayed the same. Your O1 and O2 still had your references just the same to those particular zoning districts, professional and general offices, had the reservation to the planning board, but these two were then changed in 95 to more closely match their O1 and O2 lower zoning categories to have a planning board approval. C1, other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the planning board that such uses are appropriate in the C1 district. Standard Industrial Classification Manual will be used as a reference for these determinations. Again, note that it doesn't say other neighborhood commercial uses, just refers to it as other commercial uses. Other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon determination by the planning board that such uses are appropriate in the C2 district. Note here that it doesn't call out shopping center or general commercial specifically, or shopping center and general commercial, just as other commercial uses. The Standard Industrial Classification Manual will be used as a reference for these determinations. I think there's key language there that's important that was in that helped to kind of gear us up for the discussion we're having this evening. And maybe also relevant, I think, is this piece that I want to say we've talked about previously, maybe we hadn't. 1999, there was a Newcastle restrictive covenant. And you've heard us talk enough about restrictive covenants, especially at the last meeting. This one being a little unique because I think it actually did two things. It was a restrictive covenant and also a unity of title document. It was recorded in the public records at OR 669, page 970. In the county's public records. And this one called out and specifically stated that for lots 42 and 43, remember that 41 was really not part of this yet because the 2000 rezoning for 41 had not yet occurred. So for lots 42 and 43, the two lots that included this large metal building, that the use of the subject property was to be boatyard and related uses. And so it was a voluntary restriction placed on the property by the owner. The next paragraph in this document, I've omitted it here, but it says that this restriction shall only be lifted by the planning director, and I don't want that kind of pressure, but it then goes into a discussion about unity of title. It's so that if, whatever reason, the metal building that's on the property was removed, then this thing could then be voided and undone. But otherwise, the boatyard and related uses were intended to be perpetual in their nature, that the use restriction would apply and would unify then at least parcels, the two lots, 42 and 43, into a single parcel to be used as a boatyard and related uses. So then it gets us into the language that's specific in the Land Development Code. Remember, your reference material that you're obligated to look at, it's a shall or a will. The Standard Industrial Classification Manual will be used as a reference for these determinations. And remember, your measure here is similar. Nature similar to those listed in the C2. Here is the Standard Industrial Classification Manual, 1987. And reading it into the record 4493 marinas, establishments primarily engaged in operating marinas. These establishments rent boat slips and store boats, and generally perform a range of other services, including cleaning and incidental boat repair. They frequently sell food, fuel, fishing supplies, and may sell boats. Establishments primarily engaged in building or repairing boats and ships, classified in Manufacturing Industry Group 373. Establishments primarily engaged in the operation of charter or party fishing boats or rental of small recreational boats are classified in Services Industry 7999. Underneath that, you have the related uses that are listed, and the first one that's listed is boat yards, storage and incidental repair. Marinas, again, within the definition of marinas, it's always odd when you're defining something within the thing you're trying to define. Marine basins, operation of those, yacht basins, operation of those. But I think unique here that it says boat yards. You have within your packet, and folks that wanted to refer to this had the copies of this Standard Industrial Classification Manual, and this section was included. Along with that, I included the section related to boat manufacturing, the part that was inclusive of the use that had been historically approved on this parcel, so that you could see how that was treated in the Standard Industrial Classification Manual as a manufacturing operation. I also included in there the warehouse section within the packet. So you could see then that that was intended and included under a transportation classification in the Standard Industrial Classification Manual. And so that to me was intended to provide that level area for you then to move forward in any determination. I have the full classification manual here. If you wish to have me look up other uses, I can do it on the monitor, and we can all look at those together. The consideration here, of course, and those who are savvy with this stuff know that the 1987 was a long time ago, and so we now don't have that anymore, principally thanks to NAFTA, that we have the 2017 North American Industry Classification System, which brought in our friends from Mexico and Canada also into this unified approach of how do we define these industries. Our code references the Standard Industrial Classification Manual. This is a successor document to it. I think it's fair for me to reference this for you to determine, if nothing else, how this is similar to the SIC manual. Officially, it does say will use the Standard Industrial Classification Manual, the one I just read, but this is the new prevailing regulation. 713930 marinas. This industry comprises establishments commonly known as marinas, engaged in operating docking and/or storage facilities for pleasure craft owners with or without one or more related activities, such as retailing fuel and marine supplies and repairing, maintaining, or renting pleasure boats. Cross-references there, establishments primarily engaged in, and then you have these listed, and these are the ones that are listed elsewhere. Building ships are classified in U.S. Industry 336611, shipbuilding and repairing. Building boats are classified in U.S. Industry 336612, boat building, both of which I included in your packet for your reference, so that you could see that those were clearly manufacturing operations, more akin to what had been previously approved as Tourgy and Newcastle. So with that, I wanted to give you the information that pertains specifically to Mr. Million's request. To my thinking with this, you're using that similar requirement. Your determination is to come up with the similar use to his request. He's provided his request as, I want you to determine marinas. And so if you're laboring over that, maybe I had also. And so before, when we had this discussion, I had talked about dry boat storage. I had talked about boat storage. I think you had seen from this exercise that storage is listed here. I'll leave that determination to you, and I think that's up to you to determine, first, is this what we should be talking about? Marinas, is that his, does that take in the totality of his use, or maybe that's not even for you to discuss, it's It's that this is his request, this is the limits of his request, for you then to determine if something exists currently in C2 that is similar to this operation, I think is your charge, and using that reference then, the SIC manual, to get to that limit. Remembering that you have prohibited uses that are listed, so I included those for you, the warehousing being one of those that's come up, and I included that for you in both the SIC and the NAICS, so that you could see that those are not classified the same as this use. Warehousing is intended to be a very transportation-intensive use, more of an industrial-type use. The boat building operation also being an industrial-type use. My charge to you is not to look at what either was previously requested by Mr. Million or what was previously developed on the parcel, as much as you are to look at this use, this request specific from Mr. Million, and see how it works with the list of permitted uses in the C2 district that I had provided to you. So particularly, I'd pull your attention to boat service establishments and leave that for you to look at as this relates to this definition that's in front of you. With that, I'll wrap up. I think you'll have questions for me. I'm eager for those. And as I see it, you have the three options available to you. Approve the request finding that a marina is a use of a nature similar to those listed in the C2 district, relying on the standard industrial classification manual for that determination. Deny the request finding the marina is not a use of a nature similar to those listed in the C2 district. And then the final item, continue or table the request to a time and date certain. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll close, await any questions or comments, submit for the record my staff report, those items that I had referenced that included within your packet, the excerpt from the SIC manual, the excerpt from the NAICS, and then the full text of the C2 zoning district for you to refer to in order to make this determination. I'm available for any questions or comments from you. I thank you for your attention, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. Does anyone from the board have any questions for staff before we open it up to the applicant's presentation? Being no questions to staff at this time.
Mr. Chairman, also, and I'm sorry to break in because I didn't give a sufficient intro for Mr. Moylan. He has a little unique presentation for him to come forward, but we wanted to make sure he gave you some legal guidance with this. So I have another PowerPoint. So you all should have known I talked too briefly there. So he's going to use the rest of my time. Hang on just a second, if I can, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's fine.
You gonna be able to click through for me?
Yes, sir, I sure can.
Okay. Well, we've already seen that language. This is the section of the code that essentially that you're operating under, but let's keep going. They've seen that already. Okay, I want to give you some guidance, some legal guidance in how do you interpret the code. And in Florida, when a quasi-judicial body such as yourselves interprets the code, you use the same principles that a court uses in interpreting a statute. So first of all, every word in the code must be given its plain meaning. What that means is you can't have a predetermined conclusion and then cherry pick the words from the code that support what you want to reach as your conclusion. You can't ignore words that don't help you and focus on the ones that do. You have to look at all the words and assume they're all put there intentionally. Here's a quote from the Florida Supreme Court in a seminal case that is referred to as Rinker. Since zoning regulations are in derogation of private rights of ownership, words used in a zoning ordinance should be given their broadest meaning when there is no definition or clear intent to the contrary, and the ordinance should be interpreted in favor of the owner. So that is an important principle to keep in mind when you're interpreting zoning laws. They limit private property rights, and so you have to construe them as best you can in favor of the owner. Okay, so what is allowed on this site and what is not allowed? In the C2 zoning, you have the full text of our code in your agenda materials. You'll notice that the commercial 2 zoning is bifurcated. half of it refers to shopping center, half of it refers to general commercial. In the general commercial portion of this zoning district, you have what is called boat, mobile home sales, and service establishments. Those are allowed. Doesn't define them, you just have to give it its plain meaning. It also allows for mini warehouses, but that's not the end of the inquiry because we are, after all, in the scenic corridor, a national byway, a treasure of many of our local residents, and that's why we have so much focus on this item. They feel passionately, and the county has worked very hard to protect the character of that corridor. So what the zoning district gives, the overlay district takes away. So you see some of the prohibited uses in the scenic corridor. Establishments for the sales or repair of motorized boats. And it excludes canoes and kayaks, which I didn't know those were motorized, but maybe someone could affix a motor to it. So in any event, boat sales shops, boat mechanic or repair shops, those are prohibited. Now, I also included here what is prohibited in regards to mobile homes. Notice that for mobile homes, it says mobile and modular home dealerships, repair, or service establishments. Those are all prohibited. But in reference to the motorized boats, it does not prohibit service establishments. So it must be intentional that there is the omission of service establishments from what is prohibited. It seems, and it's for you to decide, but what I'm suggesting is that the service establishments was intentionally left in there. If you could click. And then, of course, I think you know well by now that warehouses, commercial warehousing, mini warehouses, those are forbidden. You can't have those, nor can you have outdoor storage. So what does the LDC mean when it says warehouse? Warehouse is prohibited. Well, the LDC does not define warehouse, and therefore we have to rely on the plain meaning. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a warehouse is a structure or room for the storage of merchandise or commodities. And that is my emphasis on merchandise or commodities in that quotation. When you think of a warehouse, you think of goods on pallets that are being moved by forklifts into trucks for distribution into the economic stream. So that's the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and we have to rely on the plain meaning of what is a warehouse, because after all, warehouses are not allowed on this site. If you decide that this use is allowed, the process is not over. The applicant still has to adhere to the strictures of the Land Development Code and, of course, whatever is required by the overlay district. So the overlay district has more stringent dimensional requirements. The lot size has a cap. The building height is lower. Site development plans, things like landscaping, they want a nice buffer along the corridor. Architecture standards. The large metal building that you see on the site today would not be allowed today. Commercial metal buildings are prohibited, and so all those standards would still have to be adhered to. There is, in fact, a guidelines handbook that helps to illustrate what the code means in these regards. Also, if you approve this, please also keep in mind, you have to keep in mind that the comprehensive plan must be adhered to as well. So if you think that this thing fits the commercial zoning, but for other reasons maybe violates the comprehensive plan, you must deny it. The comprehensive plan is a legally binding document. And one of the things that the comprehensive plan says is that properties between designated scenic roads and wetlands or open water shall be zoned the lowest intensity allowed for their respective future land use categories. So this one definitely fits that criteria. It's between a scenic byway and a waterway. And so what does the comprehensive plan say about the appropriate zoning category. The future land use designation for this site is commercial high intensity. Commercial high intensity. And in your mind, you're probably thinking, okay, I have an idea of what that means. The zoning districts in the comprehensive plan that apply to commercial high intensity flume parcels include O2 and C2. So the only C2 designation in the comprehensive plan for commercial high-intensity properties is general commercial. Notice it doesn't say C2 shopping center. The only appropriate zoning for this parcel, therefore, is the C2 general commercial portion of our code. The reason I included this slide is because, this item has a long history. It's been through the planning board and the county commission and the courts and back again. And this issue comes up. I don't know if anyone's going to mention it tonight, so I just want to lay this out there for you in case it arises. I have heard it said that because the property appraiser lists this site as warehouse, well, therefore, it's a warehouse and violates the zoning code. But the way it works is that the property appraiser must assign a code to every property in the county in order to assign an appraisal value to it, and they only have certain codes that they can choose from. And when the property appraiser looks at a giant abandoned metal building, he chose warehouse. But that doesn't mean that the proposal before you is or is not a warehouse. That's for you to determine. And moreover, it's irrelevant because the administrative code tells us that whatever the property appraiser assigns has really nothing to do with zoning. They are separate matters. Just a couple more slides, thank you. Now, you've heard me say this phrase a million times, and you probably say, why does he keep saying that? He's trying to sound fancy or something. Competent, substantial evidence. Everybody knows what evidence is, right? But what is competent, substantial evidence? For evidence to be competent, the evidence relied on to sustain a finding should be sufficiently relevant and material so that a reasonable mind would accept it as adequate to support the conclusion reached. The key words there being relevant and material. Substantial means you have enough of it, that it's adequate. So you have the first one talking about the evidence being probative of the issue at hand, and the second one that there's enough of it that a reasonable mind would reach the conclusion. So that's what's meant by competent, substantial evidence. And I hope this doesn't happen, but if your decision once again gets before the circuit judge, the last time the circuit judge said the planning board did not base its decision off of enough evidence. It didn't have competent, substantial evidence before it upon which to reach that conclusion. And this is for the benefit of not just the planning board, but everybody who has an interest in this matter. When the court reviews a decision of a quasi-judicial body such as yourself, it's not a do-over. The judge doesn't sit and look at the evidence and say, well, if I was on the planning board, how would I have voted? That's not how it works. And there's no new hearing. Everything is based on the record that we're creating right now. And what the judge has to say is, did the board have competent, substantial evidence before it upon which it based its decision? That's it. It's not a matter of who came up with the most experts. Who can afford the most experts? Who piled on the most evidence? Or which evidence the judge thinks is actually more weightier in his opinion? That's not it. It's just, did you have before you competent, substantial evidence upon which to base your conclusion? And therefore, I would ask you, members of the board, to please, whatever you decide, whether it be to approve or deny, to make findings on the record. That way it's clear upon which you're basing your decision, should it be challenged later. If you wish for me to defend your decision, having findings will really help. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. So before we have the applicant come up now, does anyone from the board, Mr. Langello?
Just briefly, could you cite, you talked about, you had the slides with evidence on there. Could you cite where you got those paraphrases?
Oh, not off the top of my head, but it is well established in the law. Many cases cite to those quotations.
Okay,
I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but it is in the case law.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Melendez?
Yes, I have a question. Can you repeat the comprehension planning that you mentioned? Because you said that's very important.
Correct, yes, the comprehensive plan, basically every decision you make as a planning board has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the part of the comprehensive plan that I focused on was the zoning designation, because one of the letters you got from the Hammock Community Association's expert was focused on the C2 zoning for shopping districts, and it said you really are confined to that. And what I am suggesting is that under our comprehensive plan, because the future land use designation of this parcel is commercial high intensity, therefore, the part of this land development code, the zoning code that we should be looking at is the general commercial portion, not the shopping district portion. Hope that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Does anyone else from the board have any questions for council applicant? If the applicant would like to come up and give us their presentation, you have a 15-minute time limit.
Good evening, Bob Million, Hammock Harbor. I think that I can spare you a lot of the time that I had planned for this. Mr. Moylan and the rest of the staff made a good presentation. I would like to highlight the reason that we're here is not because anyone has opposed the decision within the county. This was originally approved by Mr. Mengel. It was upheld by this board. It was appealed to the BOCC. It was upheld there. The litigation did not deny the opinion. The litigation simply said there wasn't enough substantial or competent substantial evidence. So what I want to do is provide some history and some substantial evidence to help you make your decision. Historically, marinas may not have been a permitted use in Flagler County, but they've existed in Flagler County for over 40 years. Hammock in general has had marine use. 5478 North Ocean Shore. Sutton boats began in 77. Okay, the Rhodes Marine Service started in 96, added dry boat storage, added fuel, boat service. You've got 5658 North Ocean Shore. Torgy Yachts started in 1980. It was replaced by Newcastle in 2000. You've got the Hammock Beach Marine on Yacht Harbor Drive, 209 boat slips built in 2004. Bing's Landing, purchased by the county in 89. Clearly, I mean, it's not a private use, but it's clearly public use that's water related. So what I'm saying is that we're in Florida, folks. I mean, there's water. We're in Flagler County. There's 18 miles of intercoastal. We have marinas that have been operating. There's not a single reference in this code, in the Flagler County Land Development Code, to the word marina. That's extremely unusual. Okay. The majority, or I will say it is common, that most municipal districts that front a navigable waterway define marinas. And the reason they define marinas is for the reasons that Mr. Moylan stated. You have marinas that are boat building marinas, manufacturing, Sea Race example here. Okay, that wouldn't work in a commercial, near a residential area. It's not a commercial use. You have marinas like the Hammock Beach Marina, which has expensive homes around it. I mean, clearly, it's not a problem. So the reason that these municipalities define marina is also to define what they are, where they are, what the parking requirements are for them. And so I included in your package the specific marina requirements for the city of St. Augustine. Okay, they define marinas as a waterfront location for refueling of watercraft, providing minor repair services for such craft, providing storage of watercraft. A marina may be included as accessory uses a restaurant, a snack bar, a lounge, a motel, a boatel, launching facilities, and other customary accessory uses. So that's how St. Augustine defines marinas. Okay, I've got with me tonight 12 more jurisdictions that define marinas, and I'm sure I could find another 50 within the state of Florida. It did not take me very long to find those. So what I'm saying is that we're in Florida, we've had marina use forever. It's probably an error that the code didn't define it. Okay, so had the code defined it, none of us on either side of this argument would be here. It would either be prohibited, in which case I wouldn't be here, or it would be permitted, in which case they wouldn't be here. So, the problem is the code doesn't define it. Now, they've made an argument about boat storage, warehouse, marina, intensity. Okay, all of these things have lots of definitions depending on who's up here speaking. Okay, the beauty of this is that we've been through, when somebody's talking in a meeting like this, no one is really getting the exact wording correctly. They don't have a record of it. When you're in a court process, it's written down, and you can go back and look at it and review it. So although the last time we were here, the opposition said, hey guys, there's a marina. There's not a marina, there's a warehouse here. We can't have a warehouse. Warehouses are prohibited in the scenic district. Okay, so Mr. Bear came up with a court document which says clearly this use is a warehouse. And the reason the use is a warehouse is because the applicant called it a warehouse on their site development plan. Now, I need to explain why that happened. When we went in initially for our site development review with staff, this was a pre-development meeting, there are definite requirements in the code for parking for restaurants. There's definite requirements for parking for commercial space. There is no parking for marinas. Okay, so we have to put them on the site plan. It's a requirement. It's not in the code. It's not defined. So somehow, and I don't know who, somebody said, well, put it in the same as warehouse. Now, I looked at that and I said, well, if you use it parking-wise as a warehouse, that equates to 40 to 50 parking spots. Now, in my experience, and I've done marinas, I've been a consultant to public companies, to private companies, I've built them, I've owned them. I've looked at other jurisdictional codes. For this particular application, in my opinion, 50 was a good number. So I didn't complain about it. But the problem is that innocuous decision to call this warehouse on a site plan came back to bite us. It allowed their attorney to come to the court and say, gee, these guys are calling it a warehouse. So I wanted you to understand why it was there. If the word warehouse would have been in the code, had marina been defined in the code, parking would have been based on your code marina definition. So that's what happened with that one. Now, also in this is a very important thing, and it gets a little complicated, but please try to follow me on this. In the very same court document where Mr. Bear is claiming this is a marina or a warehouse, he made the statement, they're also not similar uses. Okay, and he used the example that the previous use was an SIC 3732, or whatever the number was, and defined it as an industrial use manufacturing boats. And he defined our use, our proposed use, as SIC 4493. I agree with that. Okay, I totally agree with that. Okay, the code says that the reference for determining land use decisions in the county, as Mr. Mingle mentioned, was the SIC, the Standard Industrial Classification Code. Now, it may have been replaced with the North American Industrial Classification Code, but basically they say the same things. So if you take the verbiage out of the code that we were all arguing about at these last meetings, the attorney for Hammock Community Associates says, these guys want to put in a SIC 4493, and that's boat storage. And I'm saying, well, yeah, we want to put in SIC 4493, but that's a marina. I want to make a distinction. The reason that SIC included boats, well, let me back up one step. If you do a search through the SIC codes or the North American codes, and you search for boat storage, It does not appear. There is none. If you search for marinas, it pops up, boat manufacturing, shipbuilding, pleasure marinas, there's a number of codes. If you search for warehouse, in SIC, there's 11 different classifications of warehouse. Okay, so here we have the attorney arguing with us saying, hey, this is a warehouse, but oh, by the way, it's a SIC 4493. Well, 4493 says that it includes boat storage. Well, the reason they defined boat storage within the Marina Code is to differentiate water-related marina boat storage, whether it's in a dry slip or a wet slip. You're storing a boat in a marina. That differentiates storage of a boat in a site away from the water where you can store RVs and other big equipment. So that's why when you do the codes, there is no SIC code for boat storage. Okay, now, when you go to the marina codes, there's no marina code, the warehouse codes. There is no warehouse code that references boat storage. There's no warehouse code that references marina. There's no way to tie these together. So here we have, hey guys, it's a warehouse, but also, hey guys, it's a 4493. So they've defined it themselves as a marina, and I agree with that. What I'm asking for this evening is basically a land use determination based on competent, substantial evidence. You've made the decision before, but it was rebuked because we didn't provide enough evidence for you. The Flagler County Code does not prohibit marinas. It does not prohibit marinas in the A1A area. They've existed, both in Flagler County, both in A1A. That's certainly a reason to allow the land use. Secondly, as they've defined, this is C2 commercial general, but it's commercial general because of its size. It's less than 5 acres. You read the code, and if it is more than 5 acres, it's defined as a shopping center. If it's less than 5 acres, it's defined as general commercial. Shopping centers have 21 different land use categories, specific land use categories. The 22nd item is the authority that Mr. Mingle quoted, allowing you, the planning board, to make a determination that something that's similar can be allowed. Now, the important thing is that general commercial adds 21 more codes. It is far more encompassing than shopping center. Okay, one of the codes in the general commercial is commercial recreational is allowed. Within the code, specifically permitted, within the A1A Scenic Overlay District, commercial recreational is allowed. Boat service is allowed. When I presented the application, I included that information, and I used that as evidence that without any other decision, you could justify a marina being in this area. So I'm prepared to answer questions. I have lots of additional information I don't think is necessary at this point because it's been covered by the other people. My request is that you make a determination that marina use is allowed, specifically either SIC 4493 or the corresponding North America use is fine. They both say pretty much the same thing. On a C2 parcel within the A1A Scenic Corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for you. The building that's in place right now, is that the building you're going to be utilizing to?
No.
So you're going to be taking that down and building a new one?
The building that's in place first doesn't comply. So
Right.
to have a new development, you can't remodel an old ugly building. So the answer is yes, it would be cleared.
And you're building something to the same size of that or bigger?
The building would certainly be bigger. That's not a question I have before you, but I'd be more than happy to answer it. The proposals that we have made are all building sizes below what the code allows. So I'm going to go by memory, but I've got the notes, I can get them exactly. I think this is 185,000 square feet of property. The code allows a 35% building coverage, which equates to roughly 65,000 square feet. And so without coming before the board. You could build a hotel that was 65,000 square feet. You could build a hospital. You could build a number of uses specifically permitted without a public hearing that were limited to 64,900 and some odd feet. Okay, so as far as the building size, we're not going to go to the maximum, for sure. As far as the building itself, it has to meet the specific requirements of the scenic A1A. There's architectural requirements. A building has to change sections every 60 feet. There's things that we have to meet to do it. So that's not what this is for tonight. This is the marina land use only.
Anyone have any questions for the applicant, board?
Couple things. One, just for housekeeping, you gave some information, and I think I might know because you alluded to it. Could you just briefly give us what your background is as far as how you talk to this code and these issues?
Well, I've had 2.5 years to think about it because it's been going on that
No,
long.
but I mean, it's professional. You said
I
you did.
understand. I've had a lot of different things in my life, but among other things, I have been a paid consultant by both private companies and public companies designing marinas. I've actually physically built the marinas. I have owned the marinas and operated marinas. And so this is not a one-time shot. This is something I'm thoroughly familiar with. It's something that I've done in other Florida municipalities. And so my background is as a consultant, as a designer, as a constructor, as an operator of marinas.
Thank you. And then, if you'd stay right there for a second. Adam, Mr. Millian brought up an interesting point. He's talked about boat service. That is that specifically allowed in that area? Is that, I mean, we talked about, you had your presentation was disallowed.
No.
We talked about, but boat service, was that allowed in that listed on there?
What I'm showing here is, this is from your packet, this is the printout of the C2 zoning, 30317, and then A, B is your permitted principal uses and structures, 1 through 20, let's see, we're going on there, 22 being arguably your shopping center, and so don't forget your number 21, the single-family dwelling.
So it was under
over your shopping
23
center.
there, under
And then
boat?
under 23, you see where it says
Okay, and this
subpart
was,
F.
okay, so that was in the discussion you had, and of
Yes, sir.
course you were showing that we're talking about that the service was not omitted.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, that's down in the, forgive me, I've gone through this 100 times. There's a second requirement, which is in the scenic A1A overlay. This is the general classification.
Right, no,
So
I
this is
understand. I
like-
just wanted to, I didn't see that, I thought it was a standalone item, but it was in that same grouping is where that was. Okay, thank you.
I have one more question, well, actually for staff. You guys mentioned that the building that's in place cannot be built today, correct? Okay,
Correct, because the A1A scenic corridor overlay prohibits metal buildings.
okay. So the building that you're going to be replacing this building with will be complying to what can be built in,
Those
on that property?
all requirements of scenic A1A corridor would apply.
Okay,
That's not specific to this project. That's everything that's built there has to comply. I mean, there's been no exception by the county for anything we've asked for. There's no variance that the county has agreed to on either architectural requirements or on building size.
I just wanted to confirm that he's taking down what is not allowed today, and he's not going to replace it with what's not allowed today. He's going to be replacing it with something that's allowed today.
Correct, yeah, he would have to, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Adam, when was this building built?
What was it, 80,
2004.
when was it? 2004? All right. Yeah, I won't dispute that. I'll look it up in the meantime, but yeah, 2004.
I'm
That-
sure. I'm sure.
The metal building was built in 2004?
We'll pull it up. amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. So much pressure. Hope the internet doesn't crash. Come on, technology, don't fail me. My MLS.
Can't find it.
Property appraiser has an effective year built, steel panel building, 18,800 square feet, total area 2001. Steel panel building, 2,800 square feet, built in 2001. I'm sorry, the first one, 18,800, wall height 56 feet, effective year built 2001. The 2,800 square foot steel panel building, wall height of 20 feet with a year built of 2001. And then a third building, concrete block, wall height of 9 feet, built in 1990. Three total buildings on the parcels.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else from the board have members for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. At this time, we'll open public comment up. If anyone has any comments, they'd like to come up to the podium and state their name and where they reside for the record, please.
Good evening. Dennis Bear, counsel for the Hammock Civic Association, 109 South 6th Street in Flagler Beach. This is the third time that you all have looked at this project, or some of you weren't here when the first variance came up, and you all denied the variance because you didn't find that there was a hardship. All along, I've been telling staff, I've been telling Mr. Million's prior attorneys, why don't we just develop an ordinance? Why don't we come up with a marina ordinance? You have no standards. If you make this decision tonight, that'll govern how many parking spaces. Your code doesn't address marina parking and what's required. So our position is, let's have some standards. Let's have some criteria instead of, we've been here 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, they would come up with an ordinance, we wouldn't be here tonight. It would be a whole different process. Our position remains that under your code, under some of the definitions you've heard tonight, this is a warehouse. It's not a marina. It doesn't qualify under the scenic A1A areas as the letter from Thad Crow, who was one of the volunteer planners that helped write your scenic A1A overlay district. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. Because it's either a boat, it's not a boat service because it requires storage, and storage is expressly prohibited. But I'll come back to that in just a moment. The other issue is, as Mr. Million stole my thunder a little bit, the application did refer to it as a warehouse. Just like the dry boat storage that he's been involved with up in St. Augustine, the property appraiser classifies it as a warehouse as the highest and best use. Now, that may not always determine the outcome, but I would take the property appraiser's opinion over what the use is as compared to an antiquated dictionary opinion of a warehouse. I store all my office stuff in a warehouse, and the guy next door stores all of his painting materials, and another guy stores all of his construction. So many warehouses have a different definition of what Webster Merriam may have come up with years ago as far as defining what a warehouse looks like. So our position is that it's a place to store 256 boats. It's not like a marina. A marina are mostly wet slips. This has very few wet slips associated with it. You've got the forklifts coming and going back and forth just like you would at a warehouse. They're loading and unloading the boats and putting them in and out of the water. And if you look at, again, the letter from Thad Crow and also the letter from Walter Fafidio, who was the planning director at the time, it was a very clear decision to prohibit certain uses in the scenic A1A overlay district. So the first one is establishments for sales or repair of motorized boats. So obviously sales or repairs at this site would not be allowed if you go ahead and approve the use. But then it also talks about outdoor storage. Well, that's a marina. I'm storing my boat in the water outdoors, that's outdoor storage. The other issue is that commercial warehousing is also storage as well as many warehouses. So what other boat service is there that would allow a marina or a use of this type to occur at the property? The only thing I can think about is washing the boats, because you can't sell them, you can't repair them, you can't store them under the prohibitions in the scenic A1A overlay district. So that's why I'm saying we shouldn't be going through this exercise tonight. The code needs to be amended. We need to have standards. The other point I'd like to make is that this is different than the other marinas. The Hammock Beach Marina was part of a PUD approval, massive development, just like the one at Marina del Palma, which is a boat storage. It's called boat storage. It's not called a marina at Marina del Palma. Mr. Millian had referenced Marineland previously. That's a completely different can of worms. That's in the town of Marineland. It's been there since the 1930s, and that's clearly a marina, no dry storage, no warehouses associated with it. So our position is clearly boat slips are, in this case, which was what you typically think of as a marina, are ancillary to the storage component of what's being proposed. And I just want to confirm, can I ask a question of Adam?
Yes.
Adam, do you have standards to govern how you would review a marina application if this is determined to be a marina?
No.
So again, our position is there's going to be other projects like this coming along. This is not the way to approve them. Let's revise the code. Let's come up with parking standards, stormwater standards, other issues, fire protection, and things that you normally associate and have in a code. So I would request at this time that you reject it. The use is clearly prohibited in your scenic A1A overlay district, and we need standards to govern this type of development. Thank you.
Chairman? Mr. Bear? Mr. Bear?
Don't leave us too
I don't know
soon.
if he ate up all his time, but.
Popular man.
Yes.
I just wanted, I don't want to question everybody who comes up here, but you're in,
Okay.
you're, have a lot of, at the stake here, and you have looked into this. I want to ask you, help me with a couple of things. First of all, you know, I got this tonight, Adam, and so I've had very little time to read this, and it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. But you referred to Thad's letter, and then if I can remember here, he's talking about this, a change in the zoning being a backdoor method. You're asking us to make a change, and he's saying this is a backdoor method. Is there an effort right now to change this code to allow this? Is that, am I missing something here?
We had a draft, we talked about that at the staff level. It has not
Okay, so
been
that is,
presented
that
to
is
TRC.
not, that is not on, that's
No,
not on
sir.
our agenda tonight, but that is not something that, okay. So he is actually kind of contradicting what you're saying. He's saying if we do that, we're sort of backdooring the thing if we just change the code.
No, I don't think that's what he meant.
Okay.
It was unclear, and I read Mr. Millian's letter about 3 or 4 times, exactly what he was
I'm talking about Thad's
proposing.
letter.
But I'm talking about the letter that Thad was basing his opinion on was Mr. Millian's letter, which it wasn't clear from my perspective, exactly what he was trying to do. Because I think the letter was circulated before he did his use application, and then there was a second application that came out.
So, and again, if you can, help me with this. You're equating a warehouse to the boat storage, correct?
Correct.
And that's because it's, but you said outsourced, outdoor storage is the same as a warehouse or storage?
No, but your code in the overlay district for scenic A1A, it prohibits outdoor storage as a separate prohibition. Got it right here. So it prohibits expressly, as I stated before, sales or repair of motorized boats, outdoor storage excluding plant nurseries, mini warehouses, and commercial warehousing. So if a marina is, as you saw the SIC definition of marinas, it included services, it included repairs, it included storage of boats.
So this is something, I mean, so you're all gonna come up and talk, so I'm giving you the benefit of going where I'm going with this, trying to parse this out. You know, I'm in the business of actually making commercial warehouses. I own them, I make them, I deal with architects a lot. And the definition that was given earlier sounds, what about it being a commodity, is very much what the intended use of a warehouse would be. I would agree with that as being someone who's been doing this for a long time. And again, people do put things in warehouses that they're intended for. So just because somebody threw an object in there, it doesn't mean, you know, this guy put his Halloween costumes in there, therefore it's a, you know, warehouses are designed for personal use. It's not necessarily what they're designed for. So I think we can agree that just because somebody used it for something that it wasn't intended for, doesn't mean that it encompasses all uses. But do you think that a boat, a boat is a personal pleasure craft for almost everybody? It's not really a.
Depends on how well they're
I
running
mean,
it.
the ones we're talking about, these aren't going to be conveyances of commodities. These ships that they're going to be putting in, these are not barges and
Like the
workboats.
Recreational boats.
Right, so would you equate the parking of a boat similar to the parking of a car in a parking garage versus the storage of commodities in a building? I mean, that's where I'm looking at this. What is more applicable to this? If he was to put a parking garage in there and you had a nice car, you wanted to park your car in there, that isn't expressly allowed or disallowed in here either, you know, and it's an indoor storage, and I'm wondering how we look at this versus, is that, you know, this is not a commodity, so I kind of think in the warehouse thing is maybe more of a stretch, but the parking of a personal vehicle, which a boat would be, is more akin to a car than it is to a commodity. So can you
Except
just
you're
help
not-
me parse
you're-
that part?
Yeah, you're not fueling the cars at the garage. You're not taking them in and out with a forklift. Adam, do you have that picture that shows the frontal dimensions of the building?
But in that definition of a marina, the fueling may or may not be part of the operation. You didn't have to have that.
Well, they're going, I mean, it's part of the site plan, 10,000 gallon fuel, but again, it's boat servicing and it's related to what's prohibited under the overlay district.
If he was to get permission to do a marina without doing boat repair or boat sales, he can't sell from his marina and he can't repair from the marina, how does that fit, in your opinion, into that definition I'm trying to figure out?
If he just has wet slips, it's outdoor storage.
Wet slips, but the
Yeah,
indoor
so if
building.
he has 10
part
wet
of
slips,
it.
which I think is what's proposed, that's outdoor storage. So the point I was going to make, and Adam's got so much material up here, is if you look at the picture, it looks a lot more like a warehouse than it does like a standard or any other marinas that were referenced here tonight. It's clearly the type, if you look at the clear intent of when they adopted the scenic A1A overlay district, it was to prevent that type of massive structure in that scenic area.
But we
Less
do want, but
intensive.
we want to make sure we keep this agenda item to what it is, which was nothing more than, we really shouldn't be looking at what the building looks like, because that's not really the intent of this meeting, correct? We're just here to determine whether or not the marina is an allowed use in this, here.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, you're trying to, and my argument is it's not a marina, and it doesn't, even if it were a marina, it wouldn't qualify because of the boat storage component of it. It's not allowed in the scenic A1A overlay district.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other questions?
Wait. My name is Dennis Clark. I'm at 5784 North Ocean Shore Boulevard, but I'd like to hand these out before you start my timer, if that's okay.
Dennis?
As I said, I'm Dennis Clark, and thank you for listening to me tonight. As for my expertise, I did participate in the scenic corridor overlay ordinance in developing that, and I also have been reviewing site plans for scenic A1A Pride for the last 16 years. So that's some credentials anyhow. I'm an engineer by trade. I wanted to talk to you about a little bit about the history and what was originally intended for this land use classification and why there's still an inconsistency that hasn't been resolved. The statement in the overview relating to the parcel getting changed to C2 in 2000 is a little bit misleading But Adam talked about that. The first parcel was changed in 1986, the next was changed in 1989, and then 10 years before, Lot 41 was changed in 2000. This was to accommodate the yacht building operation that was already there, predating the flume process. This was well before the scenic corridor overlay, as were the other marinas and repair operations in the area. There were two instances where during that reclassification of Lot 41, both the applicant and the planning director at the time said, Lot 41, meaning the entire lot, will be used as stormwater retention, access driveway, and buffer areas. And in your attachment 2 shows the actual document that shows those areas. So there was really to be no development on Lot 41 at all. And that was the provision of rezoning that property, and that's why it passed only by a 3-2 vote in that Board of Commissioners meeting. Apparently, the future land use amendment was never executed on any of the 3 lots, or at least 41. Adam's diagram showed that it looked like it was approved, but I don't think it's ever been executed. And there is an inconsistency between the zoning and the land use, which hasn't been corrected in 21 years. Fast forward to 2019, the new owners of the property are planning to develop it as if it were all C2, not only for industrial type use prohibited in the scenic corridor overlay, but also adding multiple businesses. Also, tree preservation calculations are big. This is site plan related, I understand. But you have to understand that 334 required parking spaces will not fit on the property. So without, here we go, okay. Can I summarize? One sentence?
Let's go ahead.
Chair? Okay, thank you. To summarize, not only does boat storage make no sense in this location, but the land use does not support it. Lot 41 cannot be used as part of it, and this is not a permitted use in the scenic corridor overlay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Bob Haruska. I'm a fairly new resident here in the Hammock.
Wait,
A couple years ago.
address, Bob?
My address is 4 Nantucket Drive, Palm Coast. And as somebody who's been a boater for 40 years and who has lived next to one of these warehousing projects many years ago, I can attest to how they are a total detriment to the community. I mean, from morning to night, you hear backup warnings, the deet, deet, deet. And to call these, I guess what I'm coming up here to say is to call these anything but a warehouse is crazy. And you've got warehouses. Warehouses and I've been a writer for 40 years. A storage place is a place that you go to put something to keep it for a longer period of time. A warehouse is someplace where you have something ready to go to deliver to somebody. Amazon has warehouses. They are ready to go at a moment's notice. When you call that number, when you make that order, they get it from the warehouse. It's not Amazon's storage facilities. And it's nowhere near a marina. There's no place to put a boat. And this is a warehouse 100%. And I just wanted to let everybody know that if you want to change the wording to warehouse to be something else, I think we need to look it up. And I mean, the modern day vernacular of the word warehouse is exactly what they're talking about, a 4-story building with boats ready to go at a moment's notice when you call. And so I totally 100% disagree. And I moved here to get away from a warehouse like this. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and board members, my name is Kathy V. I live at 5676 North Ocean Shore Boulevard, also known as Lot 40. which makes me the winner. You can call it a marina, you can call it boat storage, but at the end of the day, this thing will be a 57,000 square foot warehouse. Now, you asked a great question. It'll be 4 times the size of that current metal building. 4 times the size. It'll be as large as this building out here, this whole complex here, this facility. It'll be that large. It'll be used to store boats on racks. It'll be moved in and out with a huge forklift. Not a little forklift, a big one. The developer in his 2019 plan submitted to this TRC, and I'm glad Mr. Million brought it up. Makes it easy for me. He calculated it using warehouse parking calculations, and he titled it Hammock Harbor Site Data 8/23/19. Then, when it became apparent that warehouse wasn't going to fly, now it's become a marina. So I can tell you, after having met with he and the owner of the property, Jim Buckley, I never heard the word marina before until about a month ago. So I worked at Gainesville Regional Utilities. I was the assistant general manager interim for about 18 months, but one of my jobs there in 20 years was I oversaw warehousing and stores. We had giant warehouses. We had forklifts. We had big racks. We kept material on it. This is a warehouse. It looks the same. On the county's own LDC in section 3.08.01, it says, except as otherwise provided here in all words should have the customary dictionary meaning. And here's what's ironic. I looked at the dictionary meaning, and I looked up Webster's New World. And it says warehouse, a building where goods are stored. Goods, movable personal property. Commercial, of commerce or business, made or done for profit. So a commercial warehouse is a building where goods are stored to make a profit. Seems pretty simple. That's exactly what's going to be built 50 feet from my house. We looked at 13 other similar boat storage facilities in Florida, and guess what we found? 12 of the 13 categorized the building use as a warehouse. The 13th is classified as industrial. Even the one developed by Mr. Million, St. Augustine Shipyard, classifies the building as warehouse or flex space for part of it. The Brevard County property appraiser responded to an email when we asked why they classified it as a warehouse. We have several more of these, but I'm going to read you this one. The boat storage building is large, approximately 40,000 square feet, with a small amount of office space attached. Essentially, it's a big warehouse with racks placed inside that are used to store boats. These racks are assessed as personal property. There's no question this derelict property needs some TLC. We drive by it every day. We see it. It's right next to us. But let's be smart about development. You have an opportunity to do what's right and follow your land development code. I urge common sense and deny this request. I've got a copy of the research that we did. I'll give it to.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Ma'am?
You live right next door to the property, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So I know that's probably nerve-wracking, wondering what's going to ultimately be there, but what would you, I'm just curious, what would you want to see at that property?
Well, I mean, we knew that it was zoned the way that it's zoned. We looked at the future land use, but it doesn't say high intensity. So we figured it would be condos, houses, a restaurant, maybe some shops. I don't think we ever anticipated a 57,000 square foot warehouse. That was never, you know, it's like, what's the worst case? Well, that would be the worst case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Lori McSherry, and I live at 5652 Northwestern Shore Boulevard, which puts me on the other side. We're both neighbors to the warehouse. A 250-boat storage beside Hammock Hardware will cause nightmare traffic jams. Has the county had a traffic assessment done from the FDOT? The land has become a natural habitat for every animal in the hammock. The owl population has to be over, I'm not sure, 200 in the old building, including all the other creatures that Mother Nature has created. Greg Hansen, if you are still giving lectures about the importance of the barrier island, I suggest you should immediately stop because you keep voting against codes that were written to preserve the hammock and protect the inland area. Our county taxes are being spent in court because our commissioners keep making promises that go against code. Those tax dollars could be used to fix our bridges and roads that are in disrepair due to lack of preventative maintenance. The community would like the county commissioners to start working for the hammock and the rest of Palm Coast again. We moved here because of the beauty here. Stop ruining the hammock, please. I invite the planning board and the county commissioners to come out on a Saturday, Sunday morning at, say, 8 o'clock to see what the natural habitat has become since that building has been deserted. There are a lot of Mother Nature's creatures that live there, and if you allow anything to be built there, you're actually kicking out a natural habitat that exists in the hammock now. So, that's all I have to say. I truly hope that you assess this and possibly send someone out to the property to see what happens there every morning. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Roger Cullinane. I live at 27 Ocean Ridge Boulevard in the Hammock. I only really have two quick points to make. Mr. Mengel defined marina using Webster. I want to define it using the Oxford Dictionary. They define it, a marina, as a specially designed harbor with moorings for pleasure crafts and small boats. There's not a mention in there about storing them or warehouses. Mention was also made tonight as an example of I think they said the Hammock Beach Marina. There's really no Hammock Beach Marina. Right? The reference must be to the Yacht Harbor Marina. And that's a marina. It has hundreds of boats there. There's no warehouse. There's no storage. There's no forklifts. There's none of that. The other point I wanted to make is when you look on the internet at companies advertising for you to put your boats in these facilities, they describe it as a warehouse. Dry stack storage is a dry boat storage option that keeps your boat protected inside a warehouse. These facilities store multiple boats at a time, which are stacked and be moved with forklifts. Sounds exactly like what's being proposed here, a warehouse, not a marina. That was from extraspace.com. Another one at goldeagle.com talks about indoor boat storage options such as a dry stacked storage warehouse. So they use the term warehouse. I think if this was a marina, if they were really looking for approval for a marina, I doubt everybody would be here opposing it, where the opposition is to the warehouse. Thank you.
I have a question for you. The warehouses that you noted there, did they note anything in regards to, the storage, the fact that there's access to direct water for the boats that are being stored on that property to take them out to the water, or is it something where they're just storing those boats, the owner of the boats have to come pick them up and take them to water access? Was there any specifics about that?
I'm not sure, to be honest, but I would think if a facility on a half a mile from the water is a warehouse, you put the same building, same structure, same purpose next to the water, it's still a warehouse.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jody Bollinger, and I live at 5648 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. I had a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I think I'm going to come down to one thing. One thing we keep hearing is that you're to determine if the marina is a use similar to something that's already listed as a permitted use in the C2 district. And the one I hear the most often mentioned is that it could be called a service establishment. However, F, where the permitted use is, it is not service establishment. It is boat sales and service establishment. Our own land development code says if you use the word and, you have to take both of those together. So I would ask someone, if you were asked to define a boat sales and service establishment, I don't think anybody would say, oh, that's a place where you store boats. They would say it's a place where you sell boats and then you fix them. So this particular marina is not similar to a boat sales and service establishment. That's more like a car dealership where you sell cars and then you service them. You fix them, you repair them. So the marina is not similar to a boat sales and service establishment. The word "and" is very important. And the Land Development Code even tells us that the word "and," you have to take both of them together. I would also want to say that our Land Development Code also says that we use the SIC manual. It does not say that we use the NAICS manual. It specifically says the SIC manual. And I think that's a very important point because something could come down the road having to do with that. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you. My name is William Jordan. My address is 5572 North Ocean Shore Boulevard, just north of the proposed development. And I just want to make a couple of points. A lot of things have been addressed this evening. One of the things is the other waterborne features that are along the intercoastal in the area we're discussing. Mr. Million talked about the Marineland Marina. Again, that's a full-blown marina in the water. Bing's Landing, it's a boat launch, a county park, not a marina. The Hammock Beach Marina is an old marina that was part of a PUD. The Yacht Harbor Marina, I believe, was part of a PUD, and the Palm Coast Marina, which I believe is part of a PUD, and the new Marina del Palma, which is part of a PUD. And I apologize for just saying I think they're all part of a PUD, but kind of like yourself, I got the information at the last minute. But I think all the previous marinas were parts of PUDs, and I think the earlier planning boards did that for a specific purpose, to make sure they were utilizing the land to the best possible use. And the land that Mr. Million is proposing to develop as a boat storage to launch 240 boats on the skinniest part of the intercoastal in our county is ridiculous. That might not be part of what we're looking at tonight as part of the C2 zoning, but it is not part of the marina. It's not to my view, a viable plan as a boater to put those number of boats in that spot. And I think the previous administrations have tried to figure out where we can put marinas to best serve our county, and this particular spot as a C2 zoning spot is not necessarily that. And also, the other thing I would like to mention is it abuts residential communities, and we're residential lots. Kathy's on one side, Mr. Russell's on the other side with Hammock Harbor, and they're looking at putting a 10,000-gallon storage tank there. I think in other areas they have better easements for that 10,000-gallon storage tank than what we see where the Hammock Harbor is trying to build their facility. So thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
No clapping, please.
Hi, I'm Cindy Flowers, and I live at 5676 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. It is also the property right next to this property. I'm Kathy V's partner. 2 years before we built our house, we removed 100 tires off the property. We removed appliances. We removed a crack house. We talked to a sheriff that pulled up and said, "Thank you for buying this property and fixing it up. There was a murder on this property. Thank you for making it more beautiful, allowing mosquito control to come onto the property the first time and spray." We love the property. It's beautiful. We love our neighbors, Carl and John and Jody and everybody else, and we want to keep the hammock beautiful. The water in front of us, you look right there, it's very narrow. A gentleman was killed right there on his jet ski. If it's a marina and all those boats are coming, please let's do something to protect all my neighbors, their kids, the boaters, myself as a boater. Thank you.
Good evening. Gary Roberts, 27 Las Palmas Way, Hammock Beach. I just have one comment. Earlier, I believe one of the staff members mentioned something about when there's confusion within the zoning, you are to look at it in the best interest of the property owner. Well, I encourage you to look at everything in the interest of all property owners, not just the owner of the property that's looking to be developed, but the owners of all the properties around this development will affect. You have to take their rights and their ability to enjoy their property into consideration as well. And I hope you do that. Thank you.
All right, no more public comment? This time, does staff, not staff, does the board have any comment on? I don't know. If the applicant would like to come up and.
It's hard to rebut emotional arguments.
Just go ahead and state your name and.
Bob Million.
Thank you.
It's hard to rebut emotional arguments. Everyone has a right to object to a development. What I'm trying to get you to do is separate emotion from fact. Mr. Bear again states this is a warehouse. He does not state a reason why it's a warehouse. He just states it's a warehouse. This has been 2.5 years of throw something on the wall and see if it sticks so we can stop it. You know, if the intercoastal is too narrow for this boat storage marina, why is it not too narrow for Bing's Landing? I mean, we're launching boats there, the same thing. I mean, all of these arguments have reasonable rebuttals. Okay, the question is not how big the building is. I mean, the size is not 57,000 square feet. It's 65,000 square feet that could be built. We've never proposed that. So again, I state to you that is it a warehouse because it's big? A grocery store, is that a warehouse? It's big. Okay, what we're looking for is land use only. Assuming that we get the land use, we have to comply with code. The building has to comply, the parking has to comply, all of the landscaping, everything has to comply. So I want to eliminate the I don't want it in my backyard argument, and gee, it's a warehouse because that's a big argument, because the physical size that we have proposed is less than the size allowed. Okay. A marina is a defined term from SIC. It's not defined by me, it's defined by SIC. Okay? We fit the definition of marina. Mr. Bear calls it a marina. The lady that was up here said use SIC because it was defined. What we're trying to do is provide enough evidence for you to make a decision. So if you decide that no, a marina is not allowed in a C2 zone in Flagler County, where do we go with that one, guys? Where's a marina allowed? Okay, I mean, we're clearly a marina no matter what you want to call it. I mean, it is by National Land Development Code definitions a marina. Okay, it's big, so they're calling it a warehouse. So my appeal to you is logically, what zone does it go in? Where do you put it? Why doesn't it belong in a C2? There is no other zone. Are you going to create a new zone? Now, I agree that the county should have a marina definition in their land development code. I don't think it's reasonable for us to wait another 6 months or a year for them to create a new code. I'm just looking for a yes or a no. Does this board feel that in the C2 zone is a marina and an acceptable land use? Thank you.
Chairman? Ms. Million? If I can here, let me ask you a question. So help me with the definition of the outside storage. So if outside storage is not allowed, how does that fit into your marina?
It doesn't. We don't have any outside storage.
So but a marina can have outside storage.
It can, but we are not requesting outside storage.
So if we granted a marina blanketly, you'd automatically get outside storage in conflict with the code unless we somehow restricted that. Is that correct?
I'd be more than happy to have it restricted because there is no intent to have it.
Right. So what area of the code would you say that this then becomes similar to? So if we're looking for similar uses, what similar use are you saying?
Recreational commercial, it's similar to boat service, which is not a prohibited use. I mean, the example that was given was you have, if I can bring it up on the screen, in a C2 district, you were allowed boat sales, boat repair, and boat service, and something else. Okay, those uses are in the general county C2 area. Within the scenic A1A, 2 of those 3 are prohibited. Not all 3, only 2 of the 3. So in my original argument in my application, I believe that because it's general commercial, I believe that it falls into one of those 2 categories. And my statement was, if it doesn't fall into one of those 2 categories, this board has the right to make the determination if it's allowed or not.
Okay, so Mrs. Bollinger made a point about using the word "and," which would combine the boat service with the repair and, I think it was, sales.
That's a Mr. Moylan question. I mean, that's illegal. There, when it was allowed, it was specifically taken out of the general commercial category and allowed in the scenic A1A overlay, just that single use. I have no idea. I didn't write the code. I think it's I didn't write the code.
Okay, thank you. Sean, did you have any thought as to that point about combining in the use of the word "and," if we're supposed to use all words and give them the weight that they say? I didn't see the reference, and I don't know the reference of, she made a couple of references to
Adam had it highlighted. There we go. The reference there that we're referring to is highlighted on the screen. It's probably a little small for folks here to see it, but it says boat, comma, mobile home sales and service establishments. Now, this is what's allowed generally in general commercial areas. And it's not for me to tell you what it means, because that would probably, I'd be overstepping my bounds. You are in the quasi-judicial capacity to make this decision. And also, Adam, if you would scroll down just a little bit there to X, subpart X. That's a little too far. Mr. Millian also referred to another use that is allowed, and this one is not prohibited at all, commercial recreational uses.
Okay, that helps.
So we've,
I'd like to make a motion.
go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to deny the request.
One motion to deny the request. Anyone seconded?
Can you make the finding of why you're denying it?
I believe, by everything that I've heard, that this is a warehouse. A warehouse is someplace you store things, whether it be for a personal nature or to make money. This is both. It's me putting my boat there. I pay a fee for it. It's for my personal use. My feeling is the definition is that it is a warehouse.
We have one motion to deny. Can I make a comment with that?
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're in a predicament because, there is no code for a marina, correct? We don't have anything in place for us to go by, so now it's
So
on us.
there's no definition, and we don't have one in the code, is what was said so far.
Right. When we should. And that makes life a lot easier to make the decision for us to, now, I understand that it would be inconvenient for the applicant to have to wait on that, but it should be in place even for someone in the future. So why don't we have that in place so that would help us make a decision much easier?
Well, I just want to bring this back a little to what the attorney said earlier, that we have to keep in mind that the comprehension planning has to be taken, we have to take that into consideration. Based on the fact that the marinas are not defined in the land development code, the county's land development code does not prohibit uses which are not omitted from the listings of permitted principles, uses, and structures. So we need to bring back come back a little, like you said. We're a little bit in a bind here, but it's something that we have to take it easy, think it over, because we have a lot of stake in here.
I'll restate my motion. My motion is to deny and allow time to work on a definition of what a marina is for the land code.
I could get behind seconding that motion.
Mr. Chairman? So
Rendell.
where they're kind of going with this is almost tabling the issue. And if you were to, their concept is to have what you said that your staff wasn't going to do or didn't take up, which was actually making a process to either, define where that is in the code and what they are and where they go and all that kind of stuff. What is the time frame? If you were to say, okay, the planning board is looking for you to put this in the code one way or the other, to make a recommendation, so we would hear it, and then the county commission would hear it, and go in front of all those meetings, what is the time frame to do that?
We've been trying to make it through impact fees, which we'll be reporting on fairly soon, then comprehensive plan update, and then LDC likely in that succession. So it could be queued up. If I suppose I'll say it, if we're directed either by planning board or board of county commissioners or by I guess a request to do otherwise, then it could move faster and move forward as something that could be brought forward as an applicant just as well for a text amendment. I think our code states that it could be. It's I don't have it in front of me, but a text change can be requested by several different parties. I think even a private party could do so.
And we, in this thing right here, we're not a recommending body. We are the only decision. If we were to make this tonight, then his use would be allowed, and then would be sort of, after this, any other property in the C2 would also have a marina use to it, correct? This is not specific to his property. Because the definition of what the applicant was asking for was that definition of, if that allowed in a C2 district, not a special exception for his property.
I think you could do either path. If it's I'd probably lean more towards though that you're making that determination throughout the district. It would be something, effectively it kind of becomes an asterisk of a decision made by the board that marinas are permissible and they're treated similar to whatever other use would boat service establishments, and would be treated that way elsewhere within other similarly situated C2 parcels within the unincorporated area of the county.
Well, couldn't you make it for the scenic overlay district only? So you're not doing the whole county?
I think you could, and I think just as well as this is prohibited, you have your list of prohibited uses in A1A, you could just as well make it, and when you think about it, conceptually, where else would we have these? I guess never say never. You could have it out on our shore, on the western shore on Crescent Lake, you could have a marina there. But I think you could do that. You could make it specific to scenic A1A.
I don't know how the applicant feels about the delay, but we can't, our board can't really mandate you to push this in front of anything else. So we would be at the mercy of staff and county administrator to determine where this would come up. Is that correct in reality?
I'm looking, but I think that you can, if your action here is to move forward with something that and directs us, asks us to advance that forward above all of the priorities, we can do so.
Now, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents. When we were here last time, we didn't make it. Someone said we made the decision. Actually, you had made it, and we just sort of affirmed it. And I've said all along, if not, where are we going to have this? You can't have a legal use. This is the Supreme Court of the United States, and maybe Sean would tell you if I'm wrong, but you can't have, a community cannot take a use and say that's legal, okay? Like a marina is a legal thing, it's not a drug house, and say we're not going to allow it in our community by not having it in a zoning district. So you have to have it somewhere. If it's a legal use, that's a right. And to say, well, it's not allowed specifically in this thing, so because it's not written in this book, and I can tell you that there are so many new types of businesses thought up that be long after this thing was written up. If we were to say this is the end-all and be-all, we would do a disservice to every one of us because we wouldn't be able to have most of the establishments that we go to. So, there has to be some area that this could be allowed in. But is this a similar use to the ones listed in the C2 district? Is really what we're here trying to determine tonight. And if it's automatically, if you guys put it on the agenda that this would be an extra item, it no longer has to be decided. If it's similar, it's just now if it's appropriate. Because that's what some of the people were talking about. Is this appropriate for their neighborhood? That's not what we're here to determine, if it's appropriate for your neighborhood. We're really here to determine, is this a similar use to the other uses listed in that C2 district? And that's why I was asking the specific questions about, tell me what areas are similar to it. And if we got the clarity of actual code amendment that would talk about where we're going to put these things, because it isn't mentioned somewhere else, it would be cleaner all the way around, So I kind of like the idea of coming up with that, but I'm just worried that, I've asked about having a simple change to the planning board, makeup fixed. And how many years ago was that now?
3.
So I don't know if we're ever going to see it done if we just keep waiting on it, and I think that, and the other part that Sean brought up, and I wholly believe in this, is that someone talked about the property rights of everyone. And yes, that's why we have a code, and that's what we're all here to do. But the property rights of the individual are also important. And when you weigh the two, someone mentioned about all the birds and everything that are living there. And again, this is whether it's appropriate or not, but talked about all that nice stuff that are living on the property. Well, that's somebody else's property. And who are we to go to somebody else and say, okay, you're paying taxes, you bought this property, but we like all those birds on your property, so you can't do something to your property because we like your birds. Well, you buy the property from him and then keep the birds. But in the meantime, he owns the property. And if he follows the rules, then we have to allow him to do this. And that's why we have the rules. If you want to live in a community that has very strict rules, there are PUDs, someone mentioned, and they have extremely tight regulations as to what you can do. And some people don't want to live in that community. You want to have a little bit of freedom to do some of the things they want to do. Some of those communities, you have to cut your grass a certain height, and you can't have two houses the same color next door to each other, and you can't park your car, you can't do this. There's all kinds of things you can't do. So some people say, I don't want to live in that community. So the neighborhood and the community that you live in happens to not be a PUD. It doesn't define the rules as tightly as that. But we don't have this definition in here. So my feeling is I'd like to at least try to make a resolution tonight, because I personally disagree with you, Mike. I thought that and that's what you brought up at the end, the recreational uses does sort of fit into that. And I equate this, versus a warehouse, I equate it much more to a parking garage than a warehouse. Parking garage don't sound very quaint, and so is that a similar use is what I'm struggling with, and I see it closer to yes than no, and I'm looking for some help here to make that definition, and I really didn't get a definitive yes and a definitive no.
At the end of the day, it's still a warehouse. That's,
Well, I mean, a lot of things, you store a lot of things in buildings and whatever. It doesn't mean every
I'm just
building you
talking
store
about
stuff.
the scenic overlay district. It's not allowed. Warehousing is not allowed.
But you store a lot of things in buildings. I mean, the guy who has the fish store stores his product in the back of the store.
No,
And-
that is a
and-
retail establishment. You're not
Right.
talking about a retail establishment.
But
here.
retail
You're talking-
establishments are
You're
allowed.
talking about a warehousing. I know we can talk semantics all night long, but at the end of the day, it still is a warehouse. And it's my opinion, and, I'm going to stick to it. It is a warehouse.
I agree with you. We could argue the semantics all day. I think there's a difference between storage and a warehouse. I just been in many warehouses, worked in a lot of them, and I believe this code or
or this document, the North American Industrial Classification System, really defined the warehouse for me, and, you know, it is, you think of a warehouse, things are coming and going and being delivered and being stored, being shipped, being labeled, being packed. A lot of activities happen in a warehouse where storage, I know the words are used together a lot, warehouse and storage, but I believe that there's a reason why there's two different words, because I think they mean two different things in the end. Whether or not, we're not here to decide the size of a building that might be there someday, or a storage tank, or a fuel tank, or a forklift. We're not here to decide any of that today. That is not our role. To me, looking at this list of items under the general commercial areas that's allowed now, car washes, hotels, restaurants, funeral parlors, bus stations, hospitals. To me, marina would fit under the commercial recreation use. Had we not been talking about this one particular place in the hammock, I would not see where marina would be a problem within all these other businesses that are allowed in the commercial areas.
Mr. Melendez?
Going back to what the attorney said earlier, we have to be very careful here because we don't want this to, and we don't want to end up with an egg on our faces if it goes up to a judge. So we're talking about other commercial uses of a nature similar to those, since it's not really being defined and it's not prohibited. We're not here to discuss the emotional aspect. I know, I agree with you guys, but we have to look at this from a comprehensive planning from that angle. I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
But we still have a motion.
We still have a motion for,
I haven't withdrawn my motion.
I'm sorry.
you have not?
I've not,
Yeah.
I'm not withdrawing my
I-
motion.
I mean, I look at it as a dry dock marina, right? I mean, does that make any sense? I mean, dry dock marina, it's, you know, but we don't have any, we don't know if a marina is allowed in that it's not categorized yet, and that's what I'm struggling with. I agree with you, Jack. I mean, it could definitely fall within that, within it, but it's still not defined clearly enough for me.
Unfortunately, we have two situations here. We have the code for the whole county, and then, and obviously in 2002 or 2004, they came up with, the Flagler County came up with the scenic overlay district design guideline, and it does not allow for warehousing. There's a lot of other things that it doesn't allow. I don't agree with them all, but in this case, I believe it's a warehouse. And it's not allowed under the, Flagler County Scenic Corridor Overlay District. And that's what I'm hanging my hat on. If it were just in the regular Flagler County, yeah, there'd be a different situation. But, it's in the area that is controlled by this document. I mean, if you want to table it, I'd be fine with that, but I will not take back my motion to deny.
Can you, your motion, again, was to deny, but work on
Correct.
putting it into code?
Putting it into code.
And can we add to that in regards to the timetable that is asked for it to be worked on, to be put into code? Through Angela.
We could ask them, but.
Sure, you can ask.
But
Or request?
let me put this at you then, Mike. Because I don't agree about the warehouse part, but I agree that this has got some issues that have to be resolved. So if we were to table it and ask them to bring it forward and do something, and they don't, the reason why I'm worried about your action to deny it is we deny it, and that shuts the door on the applicant's ability to, we're denying it, and I don't believe it on the right purpose. I think if we were to table it and let the staff come up with where this would be, where are you gonna put this in the code? And then if they don't do it, then, again, back to us to act. Now, we gave them the shot to do it, and now we can, but at this point here, if we deny him, then he's now, has to appeal the decision, and he's already got our board saying that it's already wrong. So the weight is gonna be against him from doing it. Not that I'm trying to make sides on him one way or the other. If we table it, we haven't picked either of the two sides, but we're trying to determine where this legal use can be, find a place in the code. We can determine whether or not this is the appropriate area, what kind of regulations would be on those types of things in general. Does it belong in the overlay or not? How many square feet can it be, and blah, 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 all these other things, that some of the people are related or concerned about, and that may solve the problem. Because we have no rules on marina, and that bothers me too. So if we allow a marina, there's no rules for us, and it was asked of Adam, what are the rules to govern that, and he doesn't have any, really.
Well, then I would suggest that we have a special meeting and give Adam and the staff a preliminary outline of what we would suggest for a marina. And that way, we would take some of the burden off the staff. We could work on different proposals, present it to them.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I ask the applicant something?
Go right ahead.
Do you have any particular, Mr. Millian, if you want to come forward, do you have any particular time frame that this decision, in your mind, is going to affect you one way or the other?
2 years ago?
Yeah, I
already
know,
affected
2 years, 2 years ago, right.
I mean, we're going around in circles with emotional items, and you're in a debate, and I'm not giving any more testimony, but I think that, I've been trying to get the staff to write the code. I personally was against revising the code to include boat storage. And that left the code open to someone having a mini warehouse with boats in it, calling it boat storage, not on the water. So there's a difference in the codes, in the definitions, in the use between storing a boat in a marina and storing the boat not in a marina.
Okay, so do you have any particular time frame that is going
Yeah,
to be?
yesterday, but I mean,
Well, but what you're asking for, which made sense, is to get further definition to
if
protect
the
the interest,
staff,
but that can't happen tomorrow.
no,
So,
if the staff would revise the code to include marinas and do it so that it included the parking requirements for marinas, it would be helpful for all of us.
but what time, 'cause we're,
Days, 30 days, is that adequate?
okay. I don't think so, but, all right.
60?
60 days, you guys could live with 60 days.
No, but I'm trying to define, I'm looking for some median ground here. I mean, it needs to be done because we're not the only marina in town. So,
So what is the hardship that it's causing you at this point?
well, not being able to build it, losing income, paying property tax. I mean, the same hardship that anyone has when they're trying to develop something. I mean, it's a financial burden that's been imposed by lack of definition of basic terms.
So your financial burden right now is paying the real estate taxes.
I wish it was. I wish it was. We have revised our site plan more than 10 times, trying to find some happy ground. You've got, for just a moment, we're required to meet with A1A Scenic Pride to review the site plan. Okay, you find out after you meet with them that these guys are wearing the Scenic Pride hat today. As soon as you meet with them, they jump across the street, they put on their hammock, community association hat, and solicit money to sue you. This whole process is just blown out of proportion with emotion. Now, you have a definition of a warehouse. I don't agree with it, but you're welcome to have your own, definition. Okay, there is an SIC code which defines marinas. It includes boat storage. I don't know that we need a rocket science to figure this out. So if the code can be amended in a reasonable period of time, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Well, we asked.
We're trying to make a decision,
we're trying to
guys.
make a
We're trying to make a
decision.
decision that could affect a lot of people.
Well, the
Public
public's
comment.
already had their turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, public comment is up, please.
Public comment is over at this point.
Okay.
That's all right.
Thank you,
No,
Mr. Millian. Thank you.
You don't, Mr. Millian?
Yeah. Adam, can you make that happen in 60 days?
I was going to offer something because I'm going to lose some money here in a little bit if we go too much longer. I'm in the betting pool for how long, wait, I shouldn't admit that out loud, right? That when the meeting's going to end. So if we can, and I know what's going to happen, so just for the folks that are sitting here, we may not have quorum next month. So the 60 days works great. And so if we could have it where we come back the second Tuesday in July.
Well, I wasn't talking about a regular meet, this type
I
of.
know, you
time.
said special meeting. And so
So I figure if we had a meeting
could.
where we could sit down and,
We were talking in the sidebar that if, and I'm prepared to offer it up, if we wanted to meet in a workshop session, we could do that. We could either do it after a regular meeting or another day. And I think I'm open
I
to
don't think
that.
after a regular meeting, no.
Yeah, that
That's-
wouldn't make sense.
I figured nobody, and that also puts me back into losing the betting pool. So that I think what we could do in the next time, we've got some language, we've got some things we're thinking of. 60 days could be at least a good start. And so if it's, I'd love to give notice of it now, because that way we'd have the ability for the public to come to that. And certainly I know Scenic A1A has some opinions on that. They had weighed in previously, I think, or at least wanted to see whatever we were going to come up with. So I'd want to have them participating with this as well.
So I would make a motion to table this issue. We have a motion on the floor. We don't have to dispense that motion. We can just leave it right where it is. Am I correct?
I'll retract my second to the motion so that we can make a different motion.
I will make a motion that we table this issue for staff to work on language to amend the code to define where marinas would be and what the different parts of how, parking and size and noise and all the different issues that you would have to do, and to bring it back to us in 60 days or thereabouts.
I'll second that.
All right, we have two motions to table this item. Let's go ahead and bring it to a vote. All in favor of tabling this item, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, we unanimously passed to table this item for 60 days.
Or thereabouts. What we'll do is we'll poll you as we're getting closer to that, I think, so that we can find out when we can schedule a workshop meeting. So we'll either be looking towards the end of June. I know that some of you had expressed you're going to be out at that 1st of June, and so we want to make sure we give enough time for some public notice to be able to get folks here. So if we can schedule that special meeting, we'll be targeting for now sometime late in June prior to our July meeting. Let's see if we can shoot for that. And then again, we'll be checking with you on those dates. First thing we want to do is check on this meeting room availability. We'll move from there. We can commit to that.
Or do it in Mexico, right?
Or do it in Mexico, yes.
So we plan to do the workshop sometime late in June?
I think late, prior to the July meeting, and so if we could plan on that meeting in a workshop session, I think that'd be great.
Okay. Works for me. All right.
If I understood you correctly, any change will come to the public? If I understood you correctly, when you come up with changes or recommendations for the zoning, it would come to the public before it was finalized?
Workshop would be a public meeting, and I don't know about public comment, but it would be open to the public, and then the planning board would hear it and provide a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners in public hearings. So they'd have to work that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, that was easy.
Item number 5. Go right ahead. All right, item number 5, it's an application 3251. This is a quasi-judicial requiring disclosure. I'd have to imagine Mr. Goodman has not ex parte in any communication since he's left us. Has anyone else had any communication with the applicant in regards to this application? So application number 3251, it's special use for raw water well field in a PUD, planned unit development, and CN conservation districts. This time I'll open it up for staff comment.
We put this together.
Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We put this together, and you'll recognize the area here. This is the southern portion of the county, Hunters Ridge Development of Regional Impact. And there are presently well sites that are in Flagler County that are part of the Ormond Beach system. And presently, Ormond Beach provides potable water to and sanitary sewer to the Flagler County portion of Hunters Ridge. I wanted to show you this graphic, and this was something I put together, and I didn't do real good at it, but this is intended to kind of highlight with the aerial a general location of these easements. And so what would be the intent with this is that you'd have these easements that would be approved through this special use request, and then off of this access easement, and this generally coincides to existing trail roads that are their haul roads. Off of these, adjacent to these areas would be the proposed well sites. The well sites will be placed in accordance with all the permitting that's needed, water management district, all of the requirements that would end up being part of all the agency permitting. Most importantly, they'd be sited in locations where they would serve their purpose, and they would be intended to provide raw water to the city for a long time, is what our hope would be with this. And so what you'll see in your packet is, and I've got a graphic here that shows it, that the more specific description of these easements, and then the intent would be then to site the well field off of each of these. So we've got the language I've already talked about, approval of this, and that easement document that would follow would be a first step. It'd be preliminary and would provide needed additional capacity for the city. I need to make sure at this point that, you know, I mentioned, and Sean and I were talking about it in the sidebar prior to the meeting. I trailed off in the staff report where I was talking about, you know, this site is our conservation park area. And so to give you a quick 20-second history with this, I was intending in that paragraph right above our photo that we normally put in the staff report to tell you what we're intending to do with this. It would be very light recreational uses, but I do need to place out there on the record that there are presently conservation easements that are over a portion of this property, which make this request problematic. I did mention that in the staff report, that still got to work with Water Management District to be able to find out if ultimately this use could be approved. And then likewise, there's some oil, mineral, gas rights that we're discussing at this point and trying to work through that. And at the time when we had taken this parcel from the Hunters Ridge developer, those issues weren't a concern for us because they coincided well with our recreation use, our limited recreation use, where we were going to be using this seasonally. In the dry periods, you could go out there and you could enjoy horseback riding. You could go out and enjoy maybe some bird watching. Clearly there was an effort with the Audubon for some synergies that we had when we talked about this, because Audubon had been a party to the original development order approval. But that at least sets the groundwork and really kind of, there's much more, or at least more, to be done beyond this step. If your recommendation is for approval of the special use, there are more things to follow. In my opinion, what's being shown here as those easement areas, and so here's that graphic that I was trying to show in red, and this is what those would coincide with in a legal description in a document. And then imagine then these smaller boxes coming off of that described easement. This would be the access easement for both access, for vehicular access to the well sites themselves and for ongoing maintenance, and then also for placing those actual raw water lines within this 50-foot corridor that you see here. And then off of that would be the well sites themselves. And so assuming that all that could happen, all that permitting could go through, then, and the easements are approved, that then the well sites would go online and would be able to service, in the end, this area and also other areas of Ormond Beach as a raw water source, would then pipe that water into the treatment plant and would then go into the potable water system for Ormond Beach. Did I lose everybody at this point? Okay. And so with that, the planning board in this instance is acting as a recommending body to the Board of County Commissioners. So your role here is to review this request presented by staff, also within the packet. Mr. Sean Finley with the City of Ormond Beach is present to be able to talk more directly about their needs. We're certainly more than willing and interested in helping them because they are helping us. They are providing these utilities in this portion of the county where we cannot provide these utilities on our own. And so our options for you recommend approval without any conditions as they've submitted. And then these are our conditions that we've mentioned, and don't want to negate any of these or to limit any of these, but development of the well sites to occur contiguous to that access and utility easement, that depiction that you saw in the packet that's included in your packet as attachment A to a future easement document. B, securing all applicable permits prior to installation and site development. And to me, that's your feasibility question. That's the one that's saying, assuming then that you can get the release, the conservation easement from Water Management District, assuming that you can get the CUP permits that you need from the district, assuming that you can get the oil, mineral, gas rights all worked out. That to me is that subpart B. And then C, coordinating access with Flagler County Land Management during construction and on an ongoing basis for maintenance. Land management, our land management group handles this facility presently. It hasn't been passed over to recreation or parks. There's some timber harvesting that's happening right now, some true raw land management activities that are happening on this parcel. The third option for you, denial of the special use, recommendation for denial to the Board of County Commissioners for the raw water production wells. And then that final fourth option, continuance or tabling of the special use for the installation of raw water production. That would be for a time and date certain for us or the applicant to come back with more information for you and for your recommendation, again, to the Board of County Commissioners. With that, I'll close, await any questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. Go ahead, Mr. Boyd.
Adam, Hunter's Ridge is both in Flagler and Volusia County, right?
Yes, sir.
And I was under the assumption that Hunter's Ridge, all those lots out there had wells and septic tanks, is that right?
No, sir. Yeah, the best of my knowledge, that both the Volusia County portion and the Flagler County portion are served by Ormond Beach Utilities, and that the Volusia County portion had been and is part of Ormond Beach, and then the part that's been developed in Flagler County, and very recently, within the last, I guess it's been about 10 years that we've had that development happening. First with Ashford Lakes Estates, when that came online, that was through the interlocal with the city of Ormond Beach to be able to provide those services. And then successive developments that have happened have had extensions of those utility lines throughout the development. And then I can give you a precursor of things to come. Some of the development that's yet to come has been delayed because some of the infrastructure needs to be now upgraded for additional capacity. I think there's a wet well lift station that needs to be upgraded in order to provide for future development. So some of that's been waiting on, honestly, the market, but also on that overall plan to come through, to be submitted to the city to receive their approval in order for us to move forward with future development in the Flagler County portion of Hunter's Ridge. But in its entirety, the Flagler County portion, and I believe, best I know, Volusia County portion, are all served by central water and sewer utilities, and there are no wells or septics. In the interim basis for irrigation purposes, there are some irrigation wells, but even to the extent that there's been irrigation quality water available, they've been pulling from the stormwater ponds to be able to meet that need.
Okay, and so these wells will service not only Hunter's Ridge, but the city of Ormond Beach?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Langella?
A couple of questions. One, is there any kind of ag use associated with this area? Or is this 100% just residential lots? And is there ag use out there?
You have, not within Hunter's Ridge itself, but you can see just to the west side of this, you have effectively the ranchettes, and you start getting into that Rima Ridge area that we've referred to. To the north of this is developments off of Boyce Lane. and where Mr. Wheaton had been doing some divisions in that area north of Strickland Durance Road. And so you have there a 5-acre development pattern.
And those would be served on wells, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Is there any concern, and I don't know if I'm overthinking this, that a 12-inch well pulling out the volume they talked about is going to affect both the wells in the area and/or any of the other hydro issues that may come up? You know, are you going to be creating sinkholes or anything else in the area because of that? And has that been looked at? And I know the DEP and all those are going to have their own look at it, but before we approve it, are we approving something that could be a problem to other people out there?
That's one of the, and I think I'm safe to say, and I see Mr. Finley rising there, that's one of the strongest considerations I'm aware of that Water Management District includes in their consumptive use permit review, is the effect that it will have on neighboring properties and other CUP permits.
Okay, so those experts are going to take this up, and
Yes, sir.
that's, okay. And then you had, this weird hieroglyphic going on, and you had another picture with some more definition in there, and I mean, you're showing an access road with sharp angles, and is this part of what we're approving, or is that just something for demonstration? We're not approving a particular, access roads, or what do you, I mean, I'm a little confused as to what we're trying to approve here. Is this drawing right here, parcel A, up on the screen, something we're approving, and we're saying that trucks and cars and whatever they're gonna have to service things are gonna be driving through those roads? And
That's what I was hoping for with this, and realizing that this may be a bit premature for you. We are trying to meet Ormond Beach's schedule, and certainly they're working diligently to advance this forward. But I would point at this graphic and the hieroglyphics, both of these together, as being the backbone. And then what would then come off of this would be the well sites that would be adjacent to this. The well sites themselves would be adjacent to this configuration that you see in front of you now.
so that
They would have joined this.
30-degree inside angle here and other things, and it's 50-foot wide thing, that's gonna be sufficient to drive trucks or whatever you need? I mean, the gentleman here probably wants to come up, I guess he's your applicant, but, I mean, are we approving this, and this is fine, and you guys have looked at this, and?
Yeah, and this does coincide with those existing haul roads that are there now, and so these have worked for logging purposes
Okay.
at this point. And
That's,
so,
that's why I just look at it, I'm looking at the oddest-looking roads I've ever seen.
and this was picked, so that part of the design with this, and let me go to that other aerial, that part of the idea here was that, I think I'm stealing some of Mr. Finley's thunder there, is that by using the existing haul roads, it would be easier to achieve the Water Management District's permitting. And so that traditionally, there, you want to avoid those additional impacts. And so if you already have that, there's no need for us to pave it. They can just as well access their well sites off of a dirt road as they could a paved road. And so the dirt road's a great option for them. And that I like this idea because, this would keep someone from going into the hinterlands to put their well site, that these would be fenced areas adjacent to this configuration. Our park, it would be a compatible use. We'd have hopefully some security that would happen there after hours, so that you'd hopefully be able to keep it as safe as you can. A rural well site typically doesn't draw a lot of attention, but it's something that I think would, at least on the concept of it, we're in favor of it, especially because it partners with the city in providing those utilities to our residents ultimately.
Thank you.
Is there a limit on the amount of water they can draw?
There will be some, and I can't give you a good estimate. I don't know if Sean can about the number of wells ultimately that would be placed there. Again, I think that's part of the magic that we leave to the Water Management District and their ultimate consumptive use permit that they would approve here. And so I think the way I've heard it described to me is that there's going to be an overall volume that they're going to be approving, and then in order to get that volume, there will be one or several wellheads that they'll be approved with that. I do need to mention, just for the record, and I think you saw it in my staff report, there's a 200-foot cone of influence that we have with the wells that mainly says within that 200-foot radius there can be no incompatible uses, and we refer to that for our ordinary siting of raw water wells. And in this instance, with our anticipated uses, we would have no issues with the compatibility. It's typically to keep an industrial type user from that wellhead.
Applicant?
Good evening, Sean Finley. I'm the Public Works Director for City of Ormond Beach, 22 South Beach Street, Ormond Beach, Florida. Adam stole all my thunder here. But I think I can touch on a couple of the questions you have. This is really the first step in this process. We are in the process of renewing our consumptive use permit through the St. Johns River Water Management District. That's a 20-year permit that we receive. In doing that, water supply is one of the questions that comes up, and one of the things we want to address at this time. We don't want to come back at a later time and do that. We want to try and incorporate all those things in there. Water well permitting, new pump permitting is a key portion of that. Siting new wells, designing wells is an involved process, as it should be. You know, we don't want to do anything that's going to be negative on the environment. We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we should be doing, and the Water Management District is going to do that. We're going to do that in partnership with the Water Management District. We've engaged the services of Barnes Furland, who is our consulting engineer. They are civil engineers, they are environmental engineers, they are environmental scientists, they are hydrogeologists. What they will do as part of this process is they will do a very detailed job of hydraulic modeling of those locations. That will allow St. John's to tell us how much we can have. That will allow them to help size those wells. We put in 12-inch, 1,000 gallons a minute as a most extreme situation. We have 38 wells. We have one that is that large. It's in our Rima Ridge range. The majority of the ones that we have in this area are in the, I don't know if you're familiar, we've got a well field that is partially in Flagler County currently. It's our Hudson well field. Those are in some of the backyards of Hunter's Ridge. Those are more in the 6 to 8 inch range, 350, 400, 500 gallons a minute. So we're likely going to have a mixture of multiple well sizes that'll incorporate that. So I think that, as Adam said, we're really at the beginning stage of this, and being able to get over this hurdle will allow us to proceed with getting that permitting process, doing those calculations, running those models, getting the engineers and the scientists to do the work that they need to do to tell us what kind of withdrawals we can do to not have a negative impact on the environment, not have a negative impact in this parcel. That's the last thing that we want to do. You know, we're doing this because we've got a service agreement, interlocal agreement with Flagler County. We want to be able to continue to honor that interlocal agreement. It's been a good agreement for us. We want to be able to continue to provide not only to those portions of Flagler County that we're currently serving, but to those future portions that are yet to be developed. We, as Adam mentioned, and a couple of questions that you had as you're coming up, all of Hunter's Ridge is on water and central water and sewer. We provide water to their doors. We receive their wastewater and process it at our advanced wastewater treatment plant. That is generally converted to reclaimed water and distributed, a lot of it to Hunter's Ridge. The funky hieroglyphics you have there, we followed that's another environmental thing that we wanted to make sure that we did. We wanted to make sure that we were having as little impact on the environment as we could, following those fire lines, following those haul lines. Looking at it, yes, a 90-degree angle is a little bit odd, but think of that more as the roadway right-of-way. These are 50-foot trails that are out there. You're gonna have a radius of a 25-foot or a 35-foot inside radius that allow them to make those turns. You're not making a turn on a dime there. And as Adam said, the logging trucks have been out there. They're the ones who are using those currently, so they're used to using it. We just below the kind of at the edge of the bottom of the screen there, we have two parcels that were deeded to us through Hunter's Ridge for the purposes of utilities plant for the future. One of them is more of a conservation easement. We probably can't do anything on that. The parcel that is on we'll call it the west side of Airport Road, we're in the process of also doing a master plan that will look at doing a plant out there that will help serve Hunter's Ridge and other portions of Flagler County. Makes it a natural to have your wells in that close proximity to a potential processing plant. We have and just to kind of follow up what we're doing to kind of help the development out there. When the developer did, I think it's Huntington, it's one of the Huntington phases was the last one that was done. They only extended the water main along Airport Road to a certain point. We've got shovel-ready plans that we're going to bid out this year that will connect that to State Road 40 and create a loop that will help maintain the delivery pressures. And so we're all in this together kind of project here. as I said, this is really the first step in the process. We're excited, and if there's any other questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
I'll make a motion to approve it under
No, I just,
2,
we have public hearings.
public hearing? Oh, okay.
No public out
There's no
there.
public
We
out there.
still got to make it official. Thank you very much. We're going to open it up to public comment. Obviously, there's none. And we'll go ahead and close public comment, board discussion. Do we have anything to discuss here?
I'm making a motion to approve under number 2.
We're going to, we have.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussions on those motions? I call the question. All in favor of aye?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. We unanimously approved. The item passed unanimously. That's application 3251. Item number 6. This is application 3252. It's for a site development plan in the industrial district. This is a quasi-judicial application requiring disclosure. Has anyone on the board had any conversations in regards to this application?
Nope.
No.
Okay, we'll open it up for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this parcel is shown here on the aerial and also within your packet, so that it borders a closed right-of-way that I think, or at least at its portion adjoining the railroad tracks that we had actually to the north, the south, and this rear portion. And I'm always getting my numbers mixed up here. I think we had 200, 202, and 203, I think, is all the numbers. I don't have, Gina sort of hesitantly nodding. And so you had some vacation that was happening with these, some conditions on that had happened, some time back. We had even a site plan that had been approved on this parcel previously. And so now, and not uncommon that we have this type of use, a storage use, that's coming forward for the site development plan greater than 5 acres. So not unlike other items that we have, that we've had tonight, the home occupation where we have a special exception, site development plans greater than 5 acres come to the planning board. Less than 5 acres would stop at a technical review committee. So this one moving forward, industrial being our land use, industrial being our zoning. Certainly the mini warehouses storage use would be permitted in industrial zoning district. This is our flood zone map here, Zone X, and then wetlands. You can see this parcel is outside of any of those mapped wetland areas. So specifically, this is showing 63,414 square feet enclosed self-storage on the site plan with 90 covered recreational vehicle and boat storage spaces. And the accompanying site plan shows that layout that would be proposed for this site. You see the limits of the paving that would happen along that north boundary on your left-hand side of the graphic that you have in front of you, so that you'd have that main entrance that would be occurring there along with the median cut that would have then that northbound left-hand turn movement that would come into the site at its main entrance. You have that parking area that's shown along with then the mini storage warehouse building that abuts both that what ends up being the portion adjoining US 1, that northeast side, and then along that south side, forming those buffers. And internal, you have then those parking areas for the boats and the RVs provided. So here's that graphic also from the site plan. I wanted to include that in your packet so you can see that facade, how that is being provided. And then the landscape buffer, noting that there is the minimum, I think it's 25 foot wide, that's required along US Highway 1 adjacent to these uses. And so you have that buffering that's shown on the landscape plan. Wanted to make sure you had that included here also, and then that idea of traffic circulation from this graphic, so that you'd have that for record. Stormwater, again, being shown at the back side of the property adjacent to the railroad tracks. Options for you would be that you'd make, and this is a situation where the planning board is the determiner of the and the approval authority here. So you would make a finding that the site development plan is approved, subject to the following conditions, and these are the conditions that we've provided through our TRC review. All improvements are required to be in place, operable, and inspected prior to the initiation of the use on the parcel, limiting the fence height to a maximum height of 6 feet with no greater than an 18-inch barbed wire or similar extension. And this final one, provision of an automatic fire sprinkler system in the mini storage building per NFPA 1, Chapter 13, and then we've got this quote here, provided that all mini storage buildings greater than 2,500 square feet and where any of the individual storage units are separated by less than a 1-hour fire-resistant rated barrier. And talking with the applicant, and I think this is, you can see here from this requirement alone, if you do something there, if you have a greater than 1-hour fire-resistant rated barrier, or your area is broken up into less than the 2,500 square foot, then the sprinkler requirement goes away, is what I think that's showing intuitively. And so we had a quick talk with the applicant saying, well, that shouldn't be a condition, but I left it in at the, as I'm remembering, as a requirement that the fire marshal had put in. You know, if it doesn't apply, if those lesser requirements are met, then the sprinkler's not required, if you followed me on that. So that if you're doing the thing that doesn't require the sprinkler, if you're doing less than that threshold, then so be it. The condition, I think, then just would not apply to that construction. And the final condition we've listed, completion of the paving of County Road 202, that road along that north boundary of this project, the county paved road specifications, appropriate signage and drainage improvements that would be provided from its intersection with US Highway 1 to extend beyond the project driveway, approximate total distance of 230 plus or minus feet. Option 2 would be for denial, that you make a finding to deny this, providing the reasons on the record as part of your motion. And then the final option is you could continue or table this forward to a time and date certain if you need more information from either us or the applicant. The applicant's present. If you have any questions, and I'll close and await any questions or comments, submitting my report for the record. The applicant does have a PowerPoint. I think they said it's going to be about 9 minutes long, which would put me into a good shape with my pool that I win nothing, but I get to drive home alone and feel very happy with doing that. So 8:45 was my meeting end. Let's see if we can keep to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. Does anyone have?
I have a question. I have 2 questions for you. One, are you, that option, that number 4 of your proposed conditions, the completion of the paved road, is that asking them to do the paved road? Is that what?
Yeah, so that was part of the
So that's a yes or no? So you are asking them?
yes.
To do that, and they understood that and agreed to that?
I'll let them talk
Okay.
about it, but I think it
All right, and then the
yes.
second, going back to number, the C, or 3, however you want to do it, if you go back to your condition before that, why are you making an NFPA requirement that any building built anywhere that meets certain requirements have to meet? Why are we putting that particular, citing that in this, you know, whether you put it there or not, if it's required, they won't get a building permit, they're going to do it. If the code changes, we're requiring something in here that now has to be amended. I mean, why are we, I've never seen us do a building or a fire code as part of a condition when it's already going to be required anyway.
I think it was at the request of the fire marshal is what I'm remembering, but I don't want to misspeak for the fire marshal, and I don't.
But again, what would be the reason, if that's going to be required by the, you know, I have to pull permits all the time, and we have same fire marshal or his successor will have to review this for compliance, and their architectural professionals will have to draw up and get permits for and whatever. Why are we putting that in here? That's what I'm very confused.
Best answer I've got here is that, and I think best answer I've got, and it's not going to be much of one, but you know, we've had a history with this parcel. We had an approved site plan. We've had a long time that's passed since that happened. My take is that this is put on the record because think of what we don't have in this area. We don't have a potable water supply. And so more often what we've had with other developments, and admittedly, they're not sprinklered within the building. They've had the dry standpipe, the dry hydrant that's there. And so I believe that this was placed there to be able to put successors on notice that, you know, if you come in here, if for whatever reason this applicant doesn't do the development, which I have every confidence they're going to do this, but that this would put those people on notice that then follow that, hey, guess what? You're going to need to do this. And if you fall outside of these, so that, you know, to read into there, everything that it's saying, mini storage buildings greater than 2,500 square feet, and where any of the individual storage units are separated by less than a 1-hour fire resistance rated barrier, you've got to do the sprinklers. And so to me, if I'm looking at, I want to avoid the expensive sprinklers, then I'm going to do two things. I'm going to make my buildings less than 2,500 square feet, and I'm going to put in a greater than 1-hour fire resistance barrier.
I don't want you to lose your pool,
Right.
but, to go home.
Thanks.
But aren't you going down a slippery slope to start, if you're gonna start warning them on one item, why don't we just put every other possible contingent?
We've
that
left
could
out
be-
the 9D nails, right? Is that
Yeah,
the?
yeah, I mean, you know, there's a whole bunch of things we're not putting in. I just have an issue with, especially citing a particular code that may or may not apply in future time.
Understood.
And we're putting something in here now that then someone go back and read the word, well, it says right in here you're supposed to do this, but that code doesn't apply. And, you know, the previous item with the SIC versus the national, you know, well, they're pointing to that thing because we put it in there. And anyway, go ahead. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, Adam, this road you're proposing, they pave, is that the one that goes back to the junkyard, the car?
No, that's 200 is that one, the one that runs back to Mathan's.
Nathan's, yeah,
Yeah, that's going to be 200.
okay. This is the one past that.
Yeah, this is north of that.
Okay, I got you.
Any other comment for staff? Applicant would like to come up? Falling asleep back there, were you?
Good evening, board. How are you? How much time we got left?
It's okay.
I'm going to be Thomas Cook. I'm at 296 Harbor Village Point, Palm Coast. I'm here with the other principal in this project, which is Pete Lyden, who can answer questions. He's going to be the general contractor as well. And Harry Newkirk is the engineer on the project. He can answer any questions as well. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I think you've seen the packet out of respect for staff and all the comprehensive documents that they've provided to you on this project. This is a self-storage facility. 80% is climate controlled, 20% are drive-up units. We're very sensitive to the 2,500 square feet, building firewalls in here with no water available in that area of the county at the moment. We'll have covered RV and boat parking, secured parking, which will be open air parking, which is another 60 spots, and on-site management 6 days a week. Just a real quick note. This project has been in the works for 3 years. In 2019, we brought in a nationally recognized consultant to the self-storage industry, spent 4 days in Flagler County, did a comprehensive analysis of that location, of the county, the demographics, the population, the traffic, everything in that part, that southern corridor of Flagler County, and came back with a very, very positive feasibility report and study, that there's demand in that part of the county. There's not that many facilities available. The closest one is in North Ormond. It's been 100% full or nearly full for the last several years. Covered parking is all full there. They actually added 60 additional spaces not long ago, filled up immediately, and they have a waiting list as long as a couple of sheets of paper, singles type. So there's a lot, and you go north, the same thing exists up on Highway 100. So there's a lot of demand. We think we're going to fill a pent-up demand and a lot of need for the southern corridor of Flagler County. Where is this located? I think you may know this, but just quickly, it's 3 miles or 3 minutes north of I-95. Anybody traveling south on I-95 and gets off on US 1, we're 3 minutes away. We're 3 minutes north to the new roundabout at Old Dixie Highway, 4 minutes to Seminole Parkway, 8 or 9 minutes to Highway 100. We can service very well the southern part of Manel and anything south of Highway 100. And we're halfway, or actually right in the middle of the 2 now entrances. One is under construction, one has been there for quite some time, to Plantation Bay. There's going to be 2,400, I believe, additional homes going into Plantation Bay. A lot of demand there for covered parking and storage, and I think we're ideally located to serve that need as well. Next one. Here's you've seen this site plan. It's these type of facilities. It's a fortress style. It'll have buildings on all 3 sides. The entrance is on the other side. There'll be fencing over there. Very secure, have state-of-the-art security. Again, on-site management 6 days a week. We think it's a really good project for this part of the county. Here's the breakdown of unit mix, 310 climate-controlled units, as small as 50 square feet, as large as 300 square feet. Great mix. We put a lot of time and study into having the right mix for that part of the county and that demographic. 74 drive-up, 90 covered canopies, and 60 secured open parking for now, and an opportunity for expansion in the future if the demand is there for it. And just as you've seen this before, just a quick view of the exterior elevations. Again, I got Harry Newkirk here, who's with the engineering firm, Pete Leiden, who's a principal, and again, is going to be the GC of the project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Langelo.
Could you answer the question that I asked of Adam, which was, is this proposal D supposed to encompass you or to pave that 200 feet, I think you said, of the road? Is that what your understanding that condition was to do?
My understanding, and if I think we're talking about the same thing, is to pave off of US 1 past the entrance to get into this facility. We're certainly willing and agreeable to pave to get to the entrance or a little bit past the entrance to this facility.
And Adam, you didn't talk about it, but what are the standards that you're going to make him pave this to? Is this a concrete commercial driveway entrance? Is this a DOT, 3/4 inch, stone type of, aggregate stone? I mean, do you have a definition as to what you're doing here when you're asking them to do?
Don't have those
See, Mr.
handy, I
Newkirk
think.
is coming forward, so maybe.
He's going to save the day, so that it's just, I think we had said county paved road standards, but let's see where you're from.
Harry Newkirk, Newkirk Engineering, 1230 North US Highway 1, Ormond Beach. Adam's absolutely correct. The road is going to be up to county standards, 2 inches of asphalt, that's heavy duty, 8 inches of base, 12 inches stabilized. On-site, it's 1.5 inches of asphalt, so the county road per standards with the drainage cross-sections on both sides, so we have positive drainage to US 1. We're permitting that with DOT, with the access at the same time.
And if you were to build the storage facility in the manner that is described by the NFPA currently, you guys would be able to put in a fire hydrant and system, fire sprinkler system, and have the pressures, you'd be able to do that there. The code he's requiring in number C is the NFP code. If you go above a certain amount, you're going to have to put in a certain type of fire suppression system, and you'd have to have certain pressures. And you guys have looked at that and are able to do that.
That is correct, but the buildings are going to be designed where we don't need to do that. They're going to be designed so you don't have to do a fire sprinkler system, have 2-hour rated firewalls, separated with the fire marshal and the building permit process. And if we went over those requirements, we would have to provide, as you stated, the fire sprinkler system and get the necessary permits with your fire marshal and building department.
Right. And you're going to make this in one phase. You're not phasing different parts of it. You're making this all in one phase, as they also.
All construction done in one phase.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any further questions for the applicant? Public comment. One blank. All right, public comments closed. Board discussion.
Chairman?
Oh,
Can I make a motion that we approve this application with the conditions that staff made, except for the NFPA? Because again, I got a big problem with trying to require a building code and a zoning thing that those things change every 3 years.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, and any discussion? I call the question. All in favor to say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Unanimously, the item passes unanimously. Application 3252. Any staff comment?
No, sir.
Board comment?
Did you win the pool? Nah.
Public comments? No. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.